Hey, look, we're live. Hi, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. Oh, let's turn this down. Let's turn that off. Let's click some things. Hi, everybody. It is the pre-show for our 220-1002 Core 2 A Plus study group. Hello, chat room. Hi, everybody. It's Thursday. It is July the 8th. And we'll be starting in about 9 minutes. 9 minutes, we'll get started. So this is the pre-show where I check to see what I've done wrong. Tuesday, there were a lot of things that were done wrong. Today, hopefully, none of the things were done wrong. We're going to find out. See what's going on. Oh, a lot happening with this. And in fact, if you have a look at all of the things that I've got going on here, I think we're in good shape. So let's do this. Let's quickly see. Recordings are going down here. You can see my Cylon. Recording up here. That looks good. Recordings are good. Audio appears to be okay. I've been watching the video. Video looks okay. I swapped out a cable a couple months ago. We'll be shooting more. I have more videos to shoot tomorrow. So I'm sort of making sure we're ready to go. I've cleared out some space on the NAS. I've got all the room freed up on my SSDs. I just need to sit in front of a camera and shoot stuff. And that's what I'm doing this weekend. Doing a lot of shooting, a lot of editing, a lot of no posting. Am I sure this is the correct study group? Well, as you've seen, Chris, I am never sure if this is the correct study group. Now, I've said it's the Core 2 A Plus study group, and that's my intention, is to present to you that study group. What you're seeing, who knows? What's going to pop up on the screen, we don't know. It's a mystery. That's the beauty of this. Of course. The app for the questions is called Socrative. Socrative is the app. You also can go to professormesser.com/QA. Did not lose power, did not lose internet. We were on the weak side of the storm. That's the west side of the hurricane is the weak side. So there was also very little rain. We got a bit of rain. We got a little bit of wind, but nothing that would even make you think that there was something worse going on somewhere else. So it was far enough to the east that did not affect us remarkably. So that's great. It's fantastic. Internet stayed up and running. Power's up and running. So we were really able to do this study group without losing a second. So which was great. I was able to work all day yesterday. I was able to get a ton of things done yesterday. It was fantastic. But we got study group today. Let's see. Do I have this in the right place? I think I do. That looks good. We'll be starting here in about 6 minutes or so, 6.5, and getting things started. This is not the study group for those of you that have never tuned in before. The back of my head. You're going to see this eventually. But right now, the back of me is what you get to see what I call the bird cam. So that's our bird cam up there. Let's see if I can turn down some of this white screen in front of me. Very bright. Get that a little bit darker. There we go. So as not to throw off the finely honed, finely tuned video. We don't want that to happen. I have spent a lot of time on the video. I don't know that I would call it finely honed, though. We've got all Core 2 today. So this will be Core 2 content. That is our A Plus Core 2 exam. We did the Core 1 2 days ago. If you missed it, you can go back to the replay 2 days ago. And then we'll do this today. Got 5 minutes. This looks good. That looks good. At about this point, just a few seconds, we'll have all of the automated messages go out and post, letting people know that that's what's going on right now, is that piece. And then we will be on our way. Hopefully, I've got some good questions for you. We will find out momentarily. If you are watching on my website or on the YouTube, then you will see the chat that's there. It's the same chat in both places. That's the one I'm reading. For folks from Canada and Washington and Illinois and Tacoma and other places checking in. Arizona was there. Houston, Kansas City. A lot of Canada today. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Omaha. We've got plenty of folks joining in. It's North Carolina, Mississippi, New York, St. Vincent, India, all over the world. Thank you for being here. We're going to have some fun. I'll ask you some questions. You can see if you know the answers. Get through all of them. Jonesboro, Indiana, Durham, United Kingdom. Not that Durham, the other Durham. Not that other Durham, but the other one. Colorado, South Africa, Illinois, New Mexico, welcome. One of the things that we'll do in the first hour is I'll ask you questions. And then in the second hour, I open up the phone lines. We will have answer any questions you have from the chat room. We can do all of this. Ecuador, welcome. London, Ukraine, North Carolina, New York. Hello, California. Oh, taking 1001 tomorrow. Best of luck. You'll do great. It'll be fabulous. And then this will get you ready for the 1002. Maybe there's a little overlap. There's not much overlap between the two. South Africa, Columbus, Gainesville, Virginia. That's the other Gainesville, not this one. And not the other one. It's the one in Virginia. Atlanta, Chicago. Welcome. Ghana is here. Sacramento. So glad you folks on the West Coast are checking in so early. Thank you so much. We do appreciate it. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Cottage Grove, Minnesota. This is a lot of people. Washington State checking in. We got Virginia, Ohio, Georgia, Illinois, Tennessee. So lots happening. Are you nervous about your 220-1002? Well, don't be. We'll take care of your nervousness today, or we'll make it worse. One of those two things will happen. It's not as bad as that. If you have a plan and you prepare yourself properly and use those exam objectives, there's nothing to be nervous about. You'll have it all there. Thank you, UK. Thank you, Argentina. Thank you, Buckeyes. Must be from Ohio. Hawaii, welcome. Hawaii, what is it, 5 in the morning? Thank you for being here. Not often we run into that one. You're an early riser. That's not me. I'm the opposite of this. You're doing an A+ Network Plus Security Plus boot camp in September. Any advice? Yes, don't do the boot camp. Why would you do a boot camp? That's a lot. There's no way. Well, it depends, I guess, on what your definition of boot camp is. My general impression of boot camps is there's too much information to possibly tell you in too short of a period of time that it's completely worthless. Not completely, but mostly. It's mostly worthless. If you've already prepared for the boot camp and you've done some studying beforehand in the hopes that you'd be able to get the most out of it, then you probably don't need the boot camp. So that's your problem, is that now I speak of this as most boot camps that I see are like 1 to 2 weeks long. Well, that's ridiculous. There's no way you're going to be able to learn everything you need to know in 2 weeks to pass one of these exams. You simply won't. So that physics problem exists regardless. But if this is one where somebody has set up a boot camp and it's something over a 6-week period or a 2-month period, well, that's different. I don't even really call that a boot camp. It's just a training. But people like to call it boot camp because it sounds cool. Come to boot camp. We're going to do boot camp. And that's what we do. It sounds great. Sign me up. That sounds cool. In reality, it's a training class that's 6 to 8 weeks long. Would you say 6 months of study for the 1001, 1002 is adequate? Yeah, I would think most people are looking at 2 to 3 months study on average for the Core 1 and 2 to 3 months for the Core 2. That obviously varies widely depending on what you already know. So 4 to 6 months is plenty of time. That fits you right into the average. Well, it's top of the hour, everybody. Let's get things started. Get rid of this clock. Let's bring up our keynote. Let's look for the green light. We got the green light. That is running. This is running. You're here. What more do we need? Let's get started, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the July 2021 Professor Messer Core 2 A+ study group. This is our study group where we ask questions from the 220-1002 CompTIA A Plus exam. We've got a lot of things to go through today. I've got plenty of questions here in this first hour where I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. In the second hour, I open up the phone lines, I take questions from the chat room, and you're welcome to ask anything. I don't know exactly what that will bring, but that's the fun of the second hour in any case. What you can do if you would like to participate is you can simply pop open a new browser window and visit this URL, professormesser.com/QA. That will take you to a service called Socrative. And it will, of course, present to you a question on the screen. That's where all of our questions and answers are, and you'll be able to answer it interactively in real time, and we'll get to see what you know. There's also an app you can get to do this. Of course there is. Get it from your favorite app store. And this is an app called the Socrative Student app. There is a Socrative Teacher app. That's mine. You want the Socrative Student app to be able to do that. It will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, all one word. PROFESSORMESSER. I apparently spelled my name wrong. No, that's the way it is. That's just rhymes. Not an exact naming convention, but close enough. We're going to go with that. PROFESSORMESSER will get you to that. And if you do all of that, if you follow those instructions and you go to that page, you will see a question from last month. We call it our rewind question. The question from last month asks, a script includes the assignment of x equals 42. Which of the following describes the value of 42? Is that a string, a variable, an integer, a comment, or a floating point? Now, if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, and we will have you lock your answer in there. As always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. And we will come back to this question in just a bit. Now, there's a lot that we can talk about here in the first few minutes. Let me see if I can step you through some of the other things happening when you're not looking at one of these live streams. It is at professormesser.com/YouTube. You can go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. You can also click the buttons, do all of those things that you would normally do. Smash whatever the thing is that you smash on the YouTube. There is that subscription that helps. Liking the videos helps. You've got clicking the bell. You can be notified when we do these types of things. We've also got daily pop quiz questions for A+ that you'll find on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. There's also a picture flavor, a pretty picture flavor on Instagram, professormesser.com/Instagram. Will also provide you with that pop quiz question of the day. They are all there. We already put out our A+ pop quiz question today. Later on today is a Security Plus pop quiz question. You'll find them on Twitter and Instagram. Today we're going to be talking specifically about the 220-1002 exam. This is an exam that came out on January 15th of 2019. We expect the retirement date of this exam to be in July of 2022. That's if we follow the convention that CompTIA has used in the past, that is when this exam is due to retire. It may change. This is all just a guesstimate at this point, so keep checking back with the CompTIA website to be sure, but I think that's a pretty good number at least to start with, which means since we're here in July of 2021, you have a year to study and pass these exams. That is plenty of time. So the moral of this particular story is if you are planning to take the exam, start studying now. Don't wait. Never, ever, ever wait to get certified. You should, of course, go and study for this exam. You'll have passed it and already have your A+ cert before this exam is retired. So that's the goal, is to make sure you're able to do that. The 220-1002 has a scale from 100 to 900. You need to get a 700. I don't know what that means. Nobody really knows what that means. Each question's worth a different number of points. All we can really say is do the best you can and hope that number comes up to be more than 700, or at least 700 or more, I guess would be more accurate. There is a lot of you have already been working on your 1001 and 1002 for quite some time. If you're somebody who's coming back to this after a long time away, you may have some older materials, but the 1002 exam almost a quarter of the exam is brand new. So don't use old materials if you're studying. Make sure you use the objectives. Go to professormesser.com/objectives and use that link to jump over to the CompTIA website where you can download your own set of exam objectives. They are incredibly important. Make sure you get your hands on those, and they're free. The 220-1002 exam covers 4 different topic domains. Those domains are operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. Those 4 areas are the questions that we will be asking today. And we'll be focusing on all of those as we step through this live stream. Some of you know that you can go out to YouTube. You can go out to my site. You can watch every single video I make from the 220-1002 and the 220-1001. Every minute of every video is available for you to watch. There is no registration required. You don't have to give me your email address. I don't want any of those things. There's nothing behind a paywall. It's all there. But some of you would like a downloadable version of this. You would like my course notes. You would like my practice exams. You would like my exam hacks ebook. All of this is available in a downloadable bundle you'll find on my website. This is the 220-1002 Success Bundle. And you can find out more about that at professormesser.com/1002 Success. There's also some sample questions on my website. They're actually archives from previous study groups. So you will find those on my Take 10 challenge pages at professormesser.com/take10, where I have hundreds of questions there for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, absolutely free. So it's a nice one to have in your pocket as well. You can also find links to all of these from the menus at the top of my site. This is a live video stream, and you can watch a replay of this stream at any time you would like on the YouTube. You can go there, and they're all archived going back years and years and years. You can, of course, get a audio-only version of this in a podcast form, so it'll be great for your podcast listening programs. You can find the RSS feeds or listen interactively by visiting professormesser.com/podcast. I have podcast versions of my study groups there for the Core 1, the Core 2, the Network Plus, and the Security Plus so far, I guess. No, I'm not really planning another one, but I always like to keep the door open. If you do come back about a day later on YouTube, you'll notice that there is a set of timestamps for everything we do. So you can jump exactly to a question, to a phone call, find immediately what you would like, because my marketing manager, Lori, is watching this on a replay and putting those timestamps in. Everybody say hi to Lori. She watches the chat room as it goes by. She does say hello. She sends her regards and looks forward to doing this one as well. This is always available on YouTube for all of our videos. You can go back years with these timestamps. Really handy and very useful. And yes, in the chat room, my podcasts are also available on third-party podcasting services such as Spotify. I think I can get it on my Sonos. It's on Google Podcasts, on your favorite podcast. If it's not on your favorite podcasting platform, let me know. I'll see what I can do to fit it onto your favorite podcasting platform. We've also got great things on the website. Eventually, you're going to need to take this exam, and do not pay full price to take your exam. You can purchase a voucher from the Professor Messer website that is already discounted. You don't need a coupon code. You don't have to have an extension in your browser. There's nothing you need to be able to take advantage of this. The same discounted price is available to everybody without playing that ridiculous coupon game. So go out to the Professor Messer website at professormesser.com/vouchers. Get your discounted voucher. Get ready for your exam. These vouchers are available for people listening in North America. That would be specifically Canada, U.S., Mexico, and in this particular definition of North America, it includes Guam and Puerto Rico, because it does. I don't make these up. This is what they tell me. So I go with that. Also, if you purchase a voucher from my site, why are you just getting a voucher? Why not also get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook? All of you have asked about this. So this is one where the Exam Hacks ebook can give you tips and tricks, life hacks to use before, during, and after the exam. It might give you a couple of extra points on the exam and help you quite a bit. So make sure you check that out at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's talk about that question we asked earlier, which was, a script includes the assignment of x equals 42. Which of the following describes the value of 42? Is it a string, a variable, an integer, a comment, or a floating point. Which one of these is it? It's hard to fit everything on the screen here, isn't it? Script includes assignment of x equals 42. Which of the following describes the value of 42? String, variable, integer, comment, or floating point. You can see that 64% of you have said that is an integer. 25% said that the value of 42 is a variable. 8% say that the value of 42 is a string. And then we have 1 and 2% that said it's a comment or floating point. We've got a lot of different things to know about scripting, things you need to know about when certain scripts are used. It's part of the 220-1002 exam. But this is certainly something you will find with numbers and letters and different formats of numbers. You need to understand what the differences are because each one of those is different when it comes to scripting languages. One of them is the string type. Anything that is letters or a grouping of letters and numbers together is a string. But a number by itself, a whole number that is not a decimal, is an integer. That's what we call an integer. So x equals 42, that 42 is the integer. X is the variable. X is the variable. The number next to that variable in this particular case is an integer. Now, if it is not an integer, if there is more than just a whole number, like a fraction of a number, then it's what we call a floating point data type. So useful to have that there as well. Maybe that will give you some interesting feedback, some interesting things to think about as you start your process of going through scripting and understanding those. Very useful to know what those different data types might be. So in this case, those of you, 66% of you answered integer, and that is the right number. 23% said variable, almost a quarter of you, but it was the x that is the variable. It is the number to the right of the x, the 42, that is the data type that would be, in this case, an integer. The 42 is not a variable. The x is the variable. And we've got a string. In this particular case, there are no quotes around 42. Strings usually have quotation marks or some type of delimiter to designate them as a string value. In this particular case, there is no string. It's just the numbers 42 stuck there. So hopefully that will help you determine whether it's a string or an integer. It's definitely not a comment, and as we know, there's no decimal points here, so it is not a floating point. So we know that in this particular case, integer is the right answer. It is answer C, and 67% of you chose that one and got it absolutely right. Well done. Well, that gets us to where we can start with some new questions in this study group. And we have a number of new questions, but if you've watched these study groups before, you know that we don't just do multiple choice. The first new question of every month is a performance-based question. So if you are working through these performance-based questions, you know that it is more than just a multiple choice. There are usually other types of things you have to do. You have to put things in order. You have to do matching. It's a drag and drop. There's things from a pull-down menu, or it might be a combination of all of those things. In this particular case, I put together something we can at least do online and be able to work with those. So maybe that will help you too. Let's see if we can step through these. I have a performance-based question for you for July. Let's do it right now. And it asks, match the description that best describes the data type. And then I have 5 data types here. I have PHI, PCI DSS, GDPR, PII, and DRM. So I also have 5 different descriptions. At least it's a 1-to-1 in this case, right? These 5 different descriptions are an email address and phone number, users requesting the deletion of information, results of a recent MRI scan, playing a video requires a USB key, and groceries purchased with a credit card. So let's give, for those of you listening in the podcast, I'll give you those data types again. They are PHI, PCI DSS, GDPR, PII, and DRM. And the descriptions are an email address and phone number, users requesting the deletion of information, results of a recent MRI scan, playing a video requires a USB key, and groceries purchased with a credit card. It's a lot there to deal with. Hopefully you're able to match those up. If you think they're already in order, simply put into this piece, into your front end, 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E. Maybe that's what it would be to be able to do that. Hopefully that can give you an idea of some of the things. This is a one-to-one. On your exam, you might get a one-to-many. So there might be some left over at the end of your question. I didn't make it that hard for you on this case. I gave you just a little perspective of one-to-one, so we can work that up. Casey Ocean in the chat room, thank you for the $10 super chat donation. We really do appreciate it. And he puts in their blessings for your good work. Thank you for that encouragement. It's always nice to get that positive feedback. I'm even making more new training videos tomorrow. So we are in the middle of a big production schedule right now to create more things. And they'll be out in a month or so. You'll see some new videos coming out shortly. There's a lot of work behind the scenes you don't even see. So I appreciate that. It's very motivating. Keeps me going. The Socrative room name is Professor Messer, all one word, Professormesser. Make sure you spell it right or you won't be in the right Socrative room. There'll be an empty room. Won't be anybody there. You're wondering what's going on. You can also find links and documentation on how to get to that room at professormesser.com/live. professormesser.com/live. Now, this is a matching question. On your exam, you might get questions that have you put things in a particular order, maybe from highest to lowest, or maybe it's following the path of a particular set of processes. You may find that. You just never know exactly what type. But all of the topics from these performance-based questions come directly from the exam objectives. So they're not going to ask you something you don't know. They're just going to ask you in a way that's different than a multiple choice question. Yes, and in this case, you could switch some of these things up. So unlike a multiple choice where you either got it right or got it wrong, in this case, you might be able to get some right and some wrong. And CompTIA has said that in some cases that they will not tell you about, you may get partial credit, but you might also not get partial credit. They don't tell you. So hopefully hopefully that will help you. I can't see how it would, but that's the official stance from CompTIA. So we'll go with that. Let's see how you did with this one. Let's step through each one of these descriptions and data types and see how we do. The first data type is PHI. PHI is your personal health information. H stands for health. So on our list of things that dealt with health, the thing that probably fits the best is the results of a recent MRI scan. Magnetic resonance imaging, which you don't have to know what MRI stands for, but I'm married to a nurse. So actually MRI is not quite as outside the lexicon of what we talk about here in healthcare. So it's not that far of a reach, is it? Number 2 is PCI DSS. PHI and PCI seem like they're very close to each other, but in reality, they're very different. PHI health is H. That's C for PCI is card. It's the payment card industry is what that's referring to, which means if you're purchasing something with a credit card, the PCI DSS standard is the one that regulates how people should protect this data. So PCI DSS is matched with E, groceries purchased with a credit card. GDPR. GDPR is that European privacy laws. It's interesting that they're trying to sort of apply it across the world, and they would like it to be sort of applied universally, internationally, certainly. But it doesn't. It's just really for Europe. If you do send me a GDPR request on my site, I do try to take care of it, though. I try to apply it as if I was in Europe. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't, because our laws are very different in the U.S. regarding what we can delete and what we cannot, especially financial information. But I still try to do that anyway. Users requesting the deletion of information. That's one of the things that GDPR helps you with, is that you can ask an organization, please delete all of my personal information, and they are by law required to do that if possible. That's the if possible part kind of gets people turned around a little bit, because you can't always delete someone's personal information for other reasons, other regulations that we might have. But we certainly try here to do exactly that. The fourth on our list was PII. So we've had PHI, we've had PCI, now we have PII. PII is the personally identifiable information. That would be something that would be data that we could associate with you. And in our list of things, that would be answer A. An email address and phone number certainly qualifies as personally identifiable information, or PII. Last on our list, DRM, digital rights management, is used. Well, the only thing we have left on our list is playing a video requires a USB key. That's a very in-your-face version of DRM. Usually DRM not quite so difficult to manage, but sometimes it is. So playing a video and having a USB key required for you to play a video certainly would qualify as digital rights management. We've also seen that if you want to start an application, maybe there's a very advanced, expensive application that's loaded on a system. Maybe you have to have a USB key to be able to use that application. It's a way that these manufacturers and developers can create software and manage how that software is being used. Whether it's a good idea or not, that's a completely different argument. But it certainly is a reality. Digital rights management fits with playing a video requires a USB key. So that means that PHI matches the results of a recent MRI scan. PCI DSS are groceries purchased with a credit card, what they're going to do with those credit card numbers. GDPR is users requesting the deletion of information. PII is an email address and phone number. And DRM is playing a video requires a USB key. Hopefully, if you're familiar with those terms, you got all 5 of those right. If any of those terms look unusual, you're not quite sure what they're applying for, what they mean, how you would use them, make sure you go back and do a little bit of extra study because all 5 of them did come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. It would be very important for you to know what these are. HV in the chat room, thank you for the £14.99 donation. Who says, thank you for your help on Network Plus. Hope you do some course material on Linux Plus. That's a popular request. It is becoming very demanding for many environments. And I'm a big Linux fan, so it would be nice. I almost started a Linux course and we never got to it. But maybe, hopefully, we'll be there. Corey in the chat room, $5 donation. Corey's struggling with the 1002. Failed 4 times. Need all the help you can get. Well, we had a caller in the last study group who went through a similar thing where they just kept trying to take this exam and was really struggling with it, and then really sat down and broke out the exam objectives and used the exam objectives and some practice exams as the guiding force of what they should be studying next, and they passed. So you never fail until you stop. So at this point, you haven't stopped yet. So you can't say you failed 1002. You've only not passed it yet. So this is the time where you grab your exam objectives, print them out maybe on paper so you can write on them, maybe use some annotation on a PDF. Try to figure out if that's really a topic you know extremely well. And if not, you can start working through what the things are in that list that perhaps you might need a little more help with, a little struggle with, and be able to get through that. And I think it's a very good way to study if you haven't. Maybe that's a good focus. Now, if you've already gone through this, you've already got the exam objectives, you're already using that as a list, maybe it's time to shift things up. Maybe we get a different book than we've used in the past, very different. Maybe we make sure we've got plenty of hands-on. Maybe labs would be a good idea. And if you don't have any good Q&A, make sure you get some very good practice questions. There's some good ones out there, and I'll talk about mine later on, but it certainly doesn't have to be limited to my personal practice exams either. The goal is for you to pass this exam, whatever it takes, and whatever combination of things works, that's what we need to focus on. Chan in the chat room, thank you for the $4.99 donation. I appreciate that. It is very motivating to get the donations in the chat room and see that folks really do care about this content and helping others as well, because every penny of this goes back into making more videos and keeping all of this going. So thank you so much for that donation. There is plenty more questions to go through. Let's do some multiple choice based questions, and these come directly from the 220-1002 exam again. This next question on our list asks, a user is connecting to a share on a remote server. Which of the following permissions would apply to this connection? Would it be NTFS and share permissions? Would it be NTFS permissions only? Would it be administrative permissions? Would it be SSO? Or would it be share permissions only? A user is connecting to a share on a remote server. Which of the following permissions would apply to this connection? Would it be NTFS and share permissions? Would it be NTFS permissions only? Would it be administrative permissions? Would it be SSO? Or would it be share permissions only? If you think you know the answer, there's your link at the bottom of the page, professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. If you are watching this in a replay, though, that link is not going to work for you. You won't see any questions there. But you can still follow along on the replay. Those of us who are here live can type that in. I need to move that graphic over to the right, don't I? It just needs to be moved way over there to be able to have it out of the way. I'm going to work on that for the next study group. So we'll have to figure that out. Whenever I start working through this, it becomes a challenge to figure out how to move things around on the screen. Hopefully you're able to read those. I realize it's kind of hard to scrunch those all in there. So that can hopefully get you where you need to be with this. Whenever you start working on a network, a Windows network especially, and this is a Windows network, I didn't specifically say that, but by using the term share, hopefully that was very clear. There's obviously rights and permissions that are so important for you to be able to work through. You have to understand why you're able to either access or not access certain resources on the network. So make sure that you are familiar with all of the permissions and how they work in Windows. It is an important part of the exam. So hopefully this is one that you'll be able to step through and be familiar with. This is a very specific situation too. It's a very specific configuration, a user connecting to a share on a remote server. So hopefully it's very straightforward. Hopefully you're able to make these things happen. Yeah, although NTFS does sort of mean Windows, it doesn't necessarily mean Windows either. So I thought I would give a little bit of clarification there, just so you're familiar. For instance, I'm on Mac OS. I connect to NTFS all the time. Not because I want to, but because I have to. But it does work. Does it work perfectly? Pretty much all the time. One of the challenges, though, one of those situations where you don't want don't want to try too much on a Mac OS to talk to file systems on a different operating system that perhaps aren't completely compatible. So hopefully that's one that you have to kind of keep in mind through all of these. Let's see how you did with this question. A user is connecting to a share on a remote server. Which of the following permissions would apply to this connection? Is it NTFS and share permissions? Is it NTFS permissions only? Is it administrative permissions? Is it SSO? Or is it share permissions only? Let's see how you answered. We click the button. 40% of you say it's NTFS and share permissions. 34% of you said it's share permissions only. 14% said it's administrative permissions is what we would use. And then 9% said SSO, and only 4% said NTFS permissions only. Well, now let's step through and kind of talk about how permissions work in Windows when you're accessing a share on a remote device. So if we're talking about Windows and basically anything that's on a local file system, then NTFS permissions are specifically, if I can hit the button there, specifically for the file system that is on the local machine where that file is stored. So this is one where if you are storing something on your local computer, those NTFS permissions determine how that file can be accessed by anybody, whether it's somebody else who now sits down at your local computer or whether it's somebody connecting from somewhere else on the network. Because the file is still on NTFS, the file never leaves NTFS. The file is always stored as part of that NTFS drive, and it's always going to be there, which means NTFS as a file system, those permissions always will apply, regardless of how you're accessing the file. So we already know that if part of the answer you gave was with NTFS, then perhaps you got at least part of the answer right. Let's look at what's next then. So if we're connecting over the network, we are connecting not directly to an NTFS, we're connecting to a share that has been created by the user of that computer to allow you access. The share also has its own set of permissions. So if you're connecting across a network, first there are share permissions that apply, and then on top of that are the NTFS permissions associated with where that file is actually stored. So this is one of those situations where you do have multiple steps to be able to make that happen. And although in the chat room, Joe does say the question did not specify a Windows environment, the question, however, did say that you are connecting to a share on a remote server. That is a Windows term specifically. And of course, the answers here of NTFS and share should have given you some idea that Windows was involved here. And of course, I told you that Windows was involved. So that actually was probably your biggest clue. Whenever I go through this, I like to edit myself in real time. So there was that, to be able to do that. When you're trying to figure out, though, all right, if I'm connecting to a share, do the share permissions, are they taking priority, or do the NTFS permissions take priority? Actually, it's a combination of those two together. How difficult is that? The answer is sometimes vary. Sometimes it can be very confusing. But one thing to keep in mind is that the most restrictive setting will win. So if the share permission says you have full permission to read and write, but the NTFS permission says it's read-only, then it's read-only. Doesn't matter. The share really, really would like you to be able to read and write. NTFS says, no, most restrictive wins. I win, which means you cannot write to this file. So you really sometimes have to look at both of those and compare them and look to see what's there. Sometimes it's not even obvious. So you've got to look at maybe the parent objects in NTFS, because sometimes those permissions are inherited. They are not specifically assigned to those. If you go to my video, and this is a video from my course, the 221002, section 2.6 under Windows Security Settings, we go through both a set of share permissions and NTFS permissions. These are the NTFS permissions on the left. You can see even the permissions are a little bit different. We have full control, modify, read and execute, list the folder contents, read, write. Sort of makes sense that NTFS would have more permissions. It's the file system of the operating system. There's a lot more functionality associated with those individual file system parameters. The share permissions, very broad. Do you have full control, change, or read? And you can allow or deny either of those. That's where you would combine those things together, bring it all together. So in this particular case, the share permission says you have read permission. The NTFS permission says you can do anything, full control, modify, read and execute. You can do anything if you're one of these people. In fact, if you're in the system group is the one that's referring to. So if you try to connect to the share and do anything, if you're connecting through the share, sorry, read only is the best you can do. Can't change this. But if you are connecting on the local machine, if you're logging into that local device and directly connected to that storage, these don't apply. The share doesn't apply because you're not connecting over the network. The NTFS applies. So this is one where you will be constantly confused by these things in real time, because this is a relatively easy set of permissions on a Windows network with a lot of groups and a lot of users, and a user might have a number of different permissions, and there's a lot of shares that they're connecting to. It can get confusing. There are certain tools you can use in Windows that can start bringing together some of these and automating the process of determining what the effective permissions are. They're not always perfect in what they're providing, but they might help you as you go through this. That means in our particular case, a user connecting to a share on a remote server is having to deal with both NTFS and share permissions simultaneously. If you did answer A, 39% of you got that one absolutely right. 35% of you said share permissions only, which is true. You're coming in through share, but after you've entered through that share, you still have to access a file that's on an NTFS storage device, and those NTFS permissions will apply. So that would not be the right answer. NTFS permissions only, but wait, you're connecting from a share. Sorry, you have to have both share and NTFS in that. It would not be B either. Administrative permissions are applied for administrators. There was nothing in this question that said an administrator is connecting to a share. In fact, it specifically says a user, and although that is sort of a generic term, tends to mean someone who is not an administrator. So would not be administrative permissions, which really aren't a thing either. I sort of made that one up as there are administrative permissions, but not in this context. We've also got SSO, which is single sign-on. Windows does SSO by default using Kerberos. SSO is not a set of permissions. SSO is a way to authenticate, so that would not be the right answer. The only one that makes sense in this case, connecting to a share on a remote device, you would need to apply both NTFS and share permissions. That is answer A, and 40% of you answered that one absolutely correct. That was sort of an involved answer, wasn't it? There was a lot of moving parts in such a simple question, but that is sort of a common thing that you will find on the exam is there are a lot of moving parts with some of these questions, often multiple parts, and you have to combine them together. This was sort of one of those questions. We had to combine together on the network, local on the machine, combine those together, and to be fair, determining an effective set of permissions on a file for somebody connecting remotely can get a little confusing. But if you know the format, you understand how the process, the logic works in Windows, you'll be able to figure it out. It's not that bad. Let's do another multiple choice question. I have one for you. And here is the next question on our list. It asks, after login, a user's desktop takes 2 minutes to appear. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this delay? Would it be an invalid video driver, an incorrect BIOS version, a bad startup app, incorrect credentials, or power saving mode? After login, a user's desktop takes 2 minutes to appear. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this delay? Is it an invalid video driver, an incorrect BIOS version, a bad startup app, incorrect credentials, or power saving mode? If you think you know the answer, follow that link at the bottom of the page, professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no answers in the chat room. We'll go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer to figure that out. What is a share in a non-Windows system called? Well, it has a lot of different terms. Maybe in Linux, you're connecting to an NFS share or NFS link or NFS folder. Folder is usually the common term we would use for that because it doesn't look like anything different. It becomes part of your local file system. In Windows, we know in Mac OS, it's not really a share, is it? I guess it's the same scenario. It's more of an not really NFS either. It's Mac OS's file sharing. This is one where Linux and Unix kind of have their own flavor of file sharing and how they can work through those. Windows has a completely different way to do it, and that's why you always see SMB. You'll see the Apple File Share, AFS. So you've got things that are similar but work and are named very differently depending on the operating system you're using. Makes sense to me because they can't all be exactly the same. Not going to work that way. This question here is one of the troubleshooting questions, and troubleshooting is a big section. It's an entire domain of the 221,002. Make sure you're familiar with all of the different scenarios they give. They give a good group of questions on the troubleshooting instances of things you would run into in the exam objectives. They don't cover everything in the exam objectives, but they do a pretty good job of giving you kind of the top 30 things that could go wrong in a system and work through those. Samba is not the way that Linux or Unix would share. Samba is using Linux or Unix to be able to interoperate with a Windows SMB. That's where the Samba SMB comes from. So it's sort of like turning Linux into a Windows machine. If you want to think of it that way, it's not really what's happening. But that's sort of the idea, is you're making those two operating systems talk a little bit nicer between each other. And certainly setting up Linux to look and feel like Windows in its file sharing. Why would you want to do that? There might be really good reasons to do that, actually. So this is one where if you have a very big Windows environment and everybody's on a Windows system and you would like somebody to be able to share files from a Linux machine and have it something that's native to the Windows users, Samba works great. Yeah, it's also, there's a lot of Active Directory, not just to connect to Active Directory, but become an Active Directory node, which I don't recommend, but in some corner cases might help you quite a bit. You never know the craziness you might run into when it comes to Active Directory Windows and being able to interoperate with Linux. And the better you are with that, the more you know about it. There's your lab, by the way. If you needed a lab to take home and think, I need more hands-on, set up a Windows server, set up, or even a Windows workstation, set up a Linux machine, install Samba, get it to talk natively to Windows so that you can simply use your Windows sharing function to be able to connect to a Linux machine. There you go. New lab, everybody. And then you can play around with permissions. Let's see how you did with this one. After login, a user's desktop takes 2 minutes to appear. That's a long time in the world of waiting for a desktop. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this delay? Would it be an invalid video driver? Would it be an incorrect BIOS version, a bad startup app, incorrect credentials, or power saving mode? We want the most likely reason. Could it be multiples of these? It could be, let's see, if I look at all of these, it could almost be 4 of these. If we wanted maybe 3 or 4 of these. But it's really only one we're looking for because we want the one that is most likely. Let's see how you did with this. 64% of you say the most likely reason is a bad startup app. We have 19% of you that said it's power saving mode that's causing our problem. And then we're down to single digits. 8% said an incorrect BIOS version. We always have to blame the BIOS, don't we? 7% said an invalid video driver that has an odd carriage return there, an odd line break. And then we've got 3% that said incorrect credentials. So those are the 5. 64% is pretty strong for somebody trying to boot up and things are slow. And of course, that is one of those scenarios that I mentioned. You need to know what your options are if that happens. This comes directly from the exam objectives. You're starting up, you're booting the system, and it takes a little bit longer than normal. You're not seeing the storage drive light flash a lot. You're not seeing a lot of activity on the screen. It's just sitting there. It's just almost doing nothing. And then 2 minutes later, suddenly it starts acting normal. That's weird. Usually that means something is happening behind the scenes. Maybe it's waiting on something to load. Maybe it is trying to load something. It certainly could be hardware related as well, but we should step through what all the different problems might be. Very commonly, it's an app that is starting, especially if once you get past that point, everything works normal. There's just this 2-minute delay. That means something weird's happening during the startup process. And of course, that's when all of these little applications are starting up. So we want to control what loads during that boot process, and that might be an easy way to do it. One way to check that is through, in Windows 10, is in the Task Manager in the Startup tab. So you can go to the Startup tab, and it will list all of the things that start up when your system is booting. In this case, only 3 things. That's not a real system. You should be able to start that up and look at somebody's computer, and there should probably be 20 things there. If it's a normal user, at least 10 of them, maybe just me. On my desktop, I usually have a lot of things in my startup list. I try to now, every once in a while, go in and say, no, let's not load these things on startup anymore. Let's try to make things as efficient as possible. But occasionally, you will run into a problem with one of these, and you can enable and disable it right there from the Task Manager. Restart, see how it works. Sometimes it is a very slow process to troubleshoot this. Let's say there's 20 things in this list. Well, we can try troubleshooting a number of different ways. Let's try disabling half of them and restarting. So we'll see if the problem is still there. If the problem is still there, then it may be with the 10 that are left. If it's not still there, maybe it's the 10 that we disabled. Maybe we should flip it and see if we can get that problem to happen. We're trying to see if we can narrow down where that is, and dividing and conquering is a very common way to go about doing that, or just disable everything and load them back one at a time. It depends on how much time you have, how many startup apps might be in that list. We never know what we may be faced with when we arrive on site or connect to someone's computer. And for a slow boot, this is a very common issue and one that might work for you. That means that the folks that answered, 63% of the folks that answered C, bad startup app, got that one absolutely right. That is the right answer. Now, power saving mode is one that can certainly in some cases cause performance problems, but usually those performance problems are when you are not using your computer and it recognizes you are not actively or interactively using your computer, and it goes into either a sleep mode or a low power mode where it doesn't use as much CPU. And in those cases, it could cause a performance problem, but when you're booting up is not a time when power saving mode even kicks in. It knows you're booting up. It knows the CPU spikes are there. It knows that something is going on. It won't put itself into power saving mode to be able to do that. Sometimes you can make that happen, power saving mode, by disconnecting the power source on a laptop and running from battery. Sometimes that will slow things down, but not 2 minutes slow things down for booting up. That's not what power saving mode is for. So two minutes is pretty long time to have to wait on something. That would not be the right answer. 8% said invalid video driver, 8% said incorrect BIOS version. And both of those, if there's some type of bug associated with video drivers or a bug associated with a BIOS and a combination of hardware you might have, that could cause a problem during startup, but those are pretty rare. Those are very unusual to run into. Of all of the options available, those two would not be the most likely. They would be perhaps the most unlikely, but still possible for those things to cause a problem with the startup part. And then the last is incorrect credentials. If you logged in with the wrong username and password, you would never be at the point where your desktop would appear because you're not going to be able to log in to get to a desktop. So it would never be incorrect credentials. That would not be the right answer. The only answer that makes sense here is the bad startup app. That is your most likely reason for this delay, and 63% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Well, these have been some long questions and answers to go through. So I hope you don't mind me really going through some detail of my thought process of working through the answers of these. I assure you we will get to plenty of questions today, so do not worry. This is one where you may have already noticed that there's so many different topics on these exams. These exams are very broad. One of the questions earlier in the chat room is some folks were asking about taking this exam multiple times. What can I do to help with my knowledge of this exam? And I mentioned my practice exams. I went out to the industry. I looked at what practice exams were out there, and the practice exams were either poorly written. A number of the practice exams out there have topics that aren't even listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. I have no idea why someone would produce such a thing. And I thought there's a real need to have high quality questions and answers. So I wrote my own. And this is my Core 2 A+ practice exams, 380 pages. It's presented to you as a PDF. Inside this PDF are 3 separate practice exams. Each one of those exams is 90 questions long. It includes both multiple choice questions, performance-based questions, and there's tons of detail here. In fact, I have this right here. Here is a page from my practice exams. Each question has the question, the possible answers, a place where you could look at a quick answer, and the page you could go to for that, and then also details and the page you'll go to that. But I'll explain to you in a moment why that page is not useful for us right now because we're in a PDF. The question here, let's do one since we're here, and this is a pretty timely one. A user in the accounting department has received this error message: the print spooler service is not running. The user contacts the help desk and opens a ticket for assistance. The help desk technician performs some testing and identifies the issue. Which of these would be the best next step? Should we reinstall all printer drivers, restart the print spooler service, reboot the computer, or power cycle the printer? Got those things there. Now, if you want just one single answer, you want to know if it's A, B, C, or D, you can go to the quick answer page, page 33. You can also go to the detailed answer page, which is page 44, but instead of paging through the file, I put links in here. You'll notice I've got a link there. You just click where it says the details, and it takes you right to that page where it has the question again with those possible answers, and it tells you the answer is B, restart the spooler service. And then I give you my reasoning why that is the right answer. kind of a summary of some of the things we've already done in this live stream already. In my particular case, though, I always take these exams and I get them wrong, but it never tells me why I got the question wrong. So in my book, every single answer, whether it's the right answer or the wrong answer, will explain to you why that specific answer was either right or wrong. So you can go through every single one of these. If you answered reboot the computer, I explained to you that although rebooting the computer may cause the services to restart, it's an unnecessary step that takes time away from problem resolution. It's much easier and faster to simply restart the service. So that's why answer C would not be the right answer in this case. Now, if you go through all of those questions and you still aren't getting it, like I do, this is one where I put a link here to the video. So you can either go directly to this, or if you have this in physical form, because this book is available as a physical book that you could read through, and a PDF, but you can point your camera at the QR code to jump to the video, or you can simply click on that link for the troubleshooting section, the troubleshooting solutions, and it takes you right to the video associated with this particular question. So that is my practice exam. Oh, and before I'm done with that, let's go back to our practice exam book so you could see it. Also, when you're done with this, I just click the back button in my browser, in my PDF reader rather, and it takes me back to the question. If you have a great PDF reader, you can also start annotating the page. So if I wanted to mark this, maybe I only want to check the answers when I'm done, I can kind of color in which ones I think it is, and then later on, I can go back and see how I did. A lot of your tablets these days, you can simply write on the page itself if that's what you would like to do. So you've got some options there to be able to work through it. Find out more about my practice exams. Go to professormesser.com/Core2PE. That's our Core 2, number 2, practice exams, Core 2 PE, to be able to do that. So hopefully that can help you a little bit of that. The PDF reader I'm using on my screen is the one that comes with Mac OS, and it is called, what's it called, Preview? It's called Preview. So for those of you that are running Mac OS, it's the default PDF reader that happens to be in Mac OS. But the Adobe Acrobat reader works great, and there are tons of free readers out there that will let you annotate these as well. So useful to be able to have that there. Find out more, professormesser.com/Core2PE. All right, enough of my talking. Let's do some more questions. That's what you're here for. So I want to give you some more of these. This next question asks us, let me click it so you can see it on your app. A Mac OS support administrator is troubleshooting a remote user's Windows desktop. Which of the following would most likely be used for this connection? Would it be RDP, VNC, Telnet, SMB, or SSH? A Mac OS support administrator is troubleshooting a remote user's Windows desktop. Which of the following would most likely be used for this connection? Would it be RDP, VNC, Telnet, SMB, or SSH? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. In the chat room, I noticed you don't offer the practice exams for Network Plus. Haven't written any yet, but it's on my list. I will be making those. So that's the idea. It takes a long time to write these practice exam books. These are months in the making. Literally, I come in the morning, I write all day, into the night, literally, and then I repeat that for 2 or 3 months. And then we have a book. See how easy that is? So that's why not everything on my site is completely free. I try to make a ton of things on my site free for you so you can have that. But at some point, I have to be able to keep these lights on. So that's our trade-off. So you got at least some options there. But I try to keep the prices low enough so that everybody can afford something like that. So it should be useful to have that there. Let's see how you do with this one. I'm going to push ahead for this one and see if you're familiar with what these different options might be. The question again asked, a Mac OS support administrator, that would be someone like me, is troubleshooting a remote user's Windows desktop. Which of the following would most likely be used for this connection? Is it RDP, VNC, Telnet, SMB, or SSH? Which one is it? Let's see how you did with this one. Let's click Show Results. And you can see that 43% of you said RDP, 34% of you said VNC, 14% said SSH. So from a double digits, we got 3 good answers there to be able to work through. and figure out the details. Only 5% said Telnet. Only 5% said SMB. So you've got at least 2, maybe 3 things here that you could work through. Let's see if we happen to know what this one is. We're on a Mac OS device, but we're connecting to a Windows desktop. And when that Windows desktop, the protocol that is built in that allows us to provide remote administration to that desktop is a protocol called the Remote Desktop Protocol. I guess the name sort of gives it away, doesn't it? RDP, the Remote Desktop Protocol, where you can share your desktop across the network. Now, I'm on a Mac and you're on a Windows. So what do I use to connect to your Windows machine? Well, it's still RDP. It's the service that's running on your Windows computer. So there's a lot of different clients that you can get to connect to that Windows computer. I could be on an iOS tablet. I could be on Mac OS. I could be on a lot of different systems, but to connect to that device, I have to use something that understands and can communicate using Remote Desktop Protocol. So you could be on a phone, you could be on a Google platform, a Linux platform, a Mac OS platform, or another Windows platform, and be able to connect to that device using a remote desktop application to be able to do that. So RDP itself and being able to use RDP is not just a Windows thing, but the service that's running generally is almost always a Windows thing. If you're running on Mac OS, I'll bring up my Mac OS remote desktop client so you can see this. Here we go. So I've got my Mac OS remote. This is a Microsoft remote desktop application. Is this from Microsoft? Let's have a look at the about to show that this is a Microsoft application. And look, they were nice enough to put their entire EULA in the about window. Why do they do that? I don't need to read the EULA for that. But this is a Microsoft application that's a client for remote desktop that's running on Mac OS. And I can connect to my old TriCaster, my streaming devices. These are all my local IP addresses in here. I'm not showing you anything private or personal. But that is the application I would use to be able to connect to that Windows machine, just like this question calls that. So very easy to make that happen, which means the 46% of you that chose RDP, that is the right answer. It is remote desktop on a Windows computer. If you are connecting to a Mac OS computer or connecting to a Linux computer, they're probably not running a service that knows what RDP is, because that's kind of a Windows service. But they're running a different kind of service that does a similar thing called VNC. So if you were on Mac, wanted to connect to a Mac OS from Windows, you would probably use a VNC client to be able to do that. You've got 14% said SSH, 5% said SMB, and 5% said Telnet. Now, could you possibly find a server in Mac OS or Linux that could do some RDP? Maybe there's one out there. Maybe there is. But the question asks, what would be the most likely used for this connection? And since RDP is built into Windows and we're connecting to Windows, that's really the only viable answer here. It's the only one you would really expect to see to be able to have that there. So that is the right answer. Now, if you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I want you to be able to get an email from me that says you must have watched this thing. One of the things you can do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. Click that Contact Us link. Put your name, your email address in there. In there, put in the subject line of that, put July 2021 Core 2 study group, or something where I can recognize it's July, it's 2021, it's Core 2. As long as those are in there, I'll figure it out. And then in the body of that message, all by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, Telnet. Since everybody in the chat room is reminding everyone you shouldn't use Telnet, except you could use, and very specifically, we do use Telnet for security reasons. It's very, very useful, and you should always have Telnet available to run on your system for other reasons. Not to Telnet with, not to connect with to a remote device and do any type of administration or put a username and password in, but it can be very useful for other things. Just don't use it for remote desktop or any type of administration or really anything productive. and you'll be fine. Telnet is the super secret code word of the month. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address, tell me it's the Core 2 July 2021 study group, and then put the super secret code word of Telnet in on a line by itself, please. If you would also like to put anything else in there, I do read through every single one of these. I appreciate all of the things you put in there. I'm not able to respond back to all of them because I get so many of these requests, but I usually turn these around in about a week. So you'll be able to get those to be able to make that. Telnet is also not useful in a LAN. It's not useful in a WAN. It's not useful anywhere except for maybe looking to see if a particular port is open and what it can tell you across that port. But do not Telnet into routers. Do not Telnet into switches. Do not configure anything with Telnet. Never, never use it. Do not use it ever, ever for anything other than maybe seeing if a port happens to be open on a device. That's the only thing that really Telnet's used for. You could really use Netcat for that instead, and probably should. Do I have a Discord? Yes. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/Discord or click the Discord link at the upper right icon on the Professor Messer website. ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. Would love to have you there. Why didn't I put a Discord link in there at the very beginning? Absolutely join our Discord. That's where we do all of our chat these days. It's not even on our site anymore. It's on the Discord. And we're having a great time over there. So please join us. I'm in there all the time. So if you ever want to throw out something, converse, talk, Discord's a great place to do it. ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. I realize top of the hour, but as I mentioned, I've been talking for so long. Let's do another question. We're in overtime, people. We're going to do another one. This question asks, a user would like to connect to a Windows share on a remote server. Wait, is this the same question? No, it's not. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Would it be net, robocopy, netstat, share, or format? I'm glad I didn't give this away earlier, or did I? A user would like to connect to a Windows share on a remote server. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Is it net, robocopy, netstat, share, or format? It's got to be one of those. If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See what's there. Got to be one of these, right? I'm not sure I gave this away or not. Now I'm thinking back. I don't think I did. We'll have to figure it out. Figure out which one of these it happens to be. See if you know what you would use. We're doing a lot of Windows sharing today, aren't we? We're sharing desktops. We're sharing share permissions, NTFS permissions, and then whatever this thing is. We'll see. A user wants to connect to a Windows share on a remote server. Which of the following would provide this functionality? What would it be? I look forward to all of you in the chat room telling me that I didn't say what I'm connecting from. Is it a Windows machine? We're just going to assume it's Windows. We're connecting to a Windows share. Let's just assume it's a Windows machine. I think that's the way to do it. And if you ever start stepping through these things, you'll start to figure all of those out. See if you happen to know what this is. This one might throw you, or maybe it won't. Maybe you use this all the time. Maybe you're able to do this all the time. Maybe you know the way this works. This is one thing we can step through to figure this out. Let's see how we did. I'm going to give there's a couple more folks. You're Googling this one. Stop Googling. No more Googling. These questions are not in Google because I make new questions every month. No one has seen this question before because I just made it. Well, I didn't just, but over the weekend. I made this question. So it's not something you can easily find anyway. It's not like a port number where you can hunt that one up. You're not going to have Google in your exam anyway, right? It's a room. They lock you in. They don't let you have access to the internet. You can't bring any books. You can't bring any notes. You're in a room with nothing, and you have to answer these questions. So it's best if we pretend that it's just like taking an exam, like Roberta says. Yes, just like a test. It's exactly the way you do it. Let's see how you did with this one. A user would like to connect to a Windows share on a remote server. Which of the following would provide this functionality? Let's show results and see how we did. 55% said we would use the share command. 31% said we would use the net command. We've got 8% that said the netstat command. 5% said the robocopy command. And nobody said format. Wouldn't it be great if that was the answer? Format was the answer, but nobody said it. Well, that's not the case. However, 56% of us, a majority, said the share command. There is no share command. That's not what we would use to connect to a share. We would use the net command. The net command is the Windows operating system command sets. These are the commands to be able to do Windows things, to be able to share a directory, to be able to start a service, to be able to stop a service, to be able to do all these things. I put the net command right there. Accounts, computer, config, continue, file, group, whatever it happens to be. There is a net share command that shows you what shares are available, but does not connect you to a share. To connect to a share, you would use the net use command. Net use is what you would use to connect to and use a share. It actually assigns a share to a local drive letter. I know, why didn't they just use share? It would have made perfect sense. But then it wouldn't have been a good answer to put in to throw everybody. So they did that for me, I guess. I don't know. It wasn't intended to be. This is one of those cases where it seems like a trick question, but just remember, it's only a trick question if you don't know the content. It's only a trick question if you don't know the content. Then everything's a trick question if you don't know. So this is one of those where the problem is that there's a lot of different options for the net command, but net use, specifically why I made this question, because net use is one of those that could be asked of you. You don't have to know all of these, but net use is one of those you really should know. Pretty important. Net share sort of is a command. There it is. It's right, net share. If you want to see what shares are on a system, you can run the net share. It'll show you the list of all the shares that are there. In fact, here we go. Have these two: net view, net use, net user. Net share we don't often run into because we know what we're working with. There are, of course, ways to see this in the graphical front end, but very often you're connecting to a device and you don't have that graphical desktop available. Being able to do things at a command line provides you with valuable skills. There's valuable stuff there to be able to work through. So in our case, if we're connecting to a share, if you answered A, the net command is the command we would use to be able to do this. It's the only one that applies in this particular case as this command. It's the one that we would have used for this. We don't have a share command to pull from, so that's not the one we would use to connect to a Windows share with. Robocopy is a copy command, so it's a robust copy. I don't know why they call it robocopy. That's a robot copy, clearly, but they say it means robust. I don't think so. It means robot, and we all know it. Netstat, very useful to be able to look at statistics associated with our network connection, but Netstat does not provide us with any way to connect to a Windows share. Netstat's a very generic command that's used across multiple operating systems, including Linux and Mac OS. And Netstat, if you think of it that way, well, then it wouldn't connect to a Windows share because it runs in Mac OS and it runs in Linux. So that's not what we would use. And then we've got the format command, which initializes a file system on a storage device. And 0% of you were absolutely right. It's not the format command. So if anything, we can take away that one, that all of us were correct in knowing that it wasn't format. I think that's a win. We're going to go with that as far as a win is concerned. So that at least gets you a little bit of solace if you answered D, share, which was not the right answer. Indeed, A, net was the right answer. 31% of you got that one absolutely right. Well, if you want to find all these commands you have to know and all these command line parameters and all of these utilities that are important for you to be familiar with, they are all listed for you one by one in the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you get your copy of those. They're free. Go to professormesser.com/objectives and get these exam objectives. Incredibly useful to be able to have that. They are detailed. They are extensive. I've had people come back to me. They took their exam. They didn't do well. They didn't pass. And they tell me they asked me a lot of questions about topics I had no idea. And I said, what topics did they ask you? They asked me about the net command. Well, the net command's listed in the exam objectives. It's clearly there. They go, well, I didn't read the objectives. I thought they were just a very broad description of what we should expect. No, they are a detailed checklist of everything you need to know. In fact, if you know everything in these objectives, you're going to do fine on the exam. You're going to get through the exam just fine. There's not going to be a problem. So hopefully that can help you too. The ProfessorMesser.com/objectives, and they're free. Why wouldn't you do that? Incredibly important. We do one of these study groups every month. In August, I'm planning to have one on the 3rd and the 5th for A+. That is our Core 1 and Core 2. August 11th is Network Plus. August 18th, Security Plus. I haven't put those in the calendar yet, but I will. They will be at ProfessorMesser.com/calendar. As always, check back with the calendar constantly. Make sure that things have not changed since we've had this conversation, because sometimes they do. You know, there's all kinds of things that pop up in your life where you have to move things around. Sometimes these live things get moved around. So always keep checking back. I change my calendar immediately as soon as I know something changes. So go to ProfessorMesser.com/calendar. It's a great way to know about that. If you've been looking through this today, then you know how much information is on these exams. And my course notes can really, really help. If you're trying to put everything in context, you're trying to list out everything that's from every video, all of the charts, all of the text, all of the graphic displays, all of the things that I've set up so that you can be familiar with everything in every single video. It's all there. I don't leave anything out. I put it in the course notes. And it's a great way to support the site. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/1000notes, and you can find out more about that as well. Plenty to go through. It's also, once you've gone through the book and gone through your Q&A and gone through the hands-on and done all of the studying, it's a great study guide, I think, to help remind you what's there. You can find it at ProfessorMesser.com/1000notes, or use the links on my website. Well, can you believe we went through an hour? Well, an hour and 10 minutes. We stretched it out a little bit to be able to make that happen, but we're not done yet. We got an after show to do. I'm going to open up phone lines. I'll take questions from the chat room. We'll be able to go through that. In the meantime, don't forget the course notes and practice exams. The Exam Hacks ebook you can get for free if you get a voucher at the Professor Messer website. I need to put a Discord link on here, ProfessorMesser.com/Discord, for our 24/7 chat. There's people in there all the time now. Moving to Discord was a great idea. Everybody's there. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. And don't forget to follow us. If you really enjoyed this Q&A today, please like this video. I know you hear YouTube people say that all the time. The reason we say it is because we're working with our associates at YouTube. We have someone who is assigned to us to be able to help manage our account. They want to see if people like these videos. The only way they know if people are getting value from these videos is looking at those metrics. And so that's why it allows us to say, no, see, people really do like this thing. We should keep doing more of this. And it's great for me to see as well. I can see if it's something you like or you don't like, and then I can adjust things accordingly. It's a great thing to use. Stick around for the after show. We're nowhere close to being done yet, but we thank you for being here in this first hour, and we will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. All right, let me click some buttons. Let me push this thing. Let me get rid of that graphic. There we go. But why is there a dislike? Because there's always a dislike. There's always that person. You can't make everybody happy. But if I can make 122 people to one happy, I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that. Stand by a moment for me. I'm going to start up my phone lines, and then I will tell you how you can ask me a question either from the chat room. Really don't have to explain that part, do I? Or you can use the phone lines, which I do not have up and running yet, so please bear with me one moment. I'm the only one here, so that's why it takes me an extra second to host my show. I have to start up my show in the cloud. I have to call into my own show in the cloud, and all of this takes a little bit of time. So if you will bear with me, let's click on my Skype. There it is. That's not the way you say it. Let's click that. It will make some noises, and it will say, there we go. I haven't fixed the thing yet to tell me the right thing, and now it's just ringing. Oh, there we go.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I will type in my super secret code words, and then it will say,
enter your 6-digit PIN.
Well, I will try to do that if I can remember my 6-digit PIN. And then the nice lady says,
welcome, Professor Messer.
Thank you, nice lady. Well, very useful. So now I'm in my own system. Now you can be as well. That is the wrong lower third. See, there's always something to click, everybody. Let's click more lower thirds. because it would be useful if you could see the phone number. And fortunately, I already have a lower third for that. Wonder if I could just leave it up. Can I do that? Let's try. What if I do this? Can I flip it? Look at that. I could have just left it there. There we go. So not very professional, but then again, here we are. We made it work. That's the important part. If you would like to call in with your question, you can do that by going to this phone number. It's a toll-free number in the U.S. This toll-free number, 855-785-RJ45. West of the Rockies is 855-785-7545. If you are outside of the continental United States, you can call me for free by using Skype, because Skype will call a toll-free number and you don't have to pay any money. There's no Skype minutes required for this. So you can go to put a +1 at the beginning, +1 855-785-7545, and you can also get to that phone line and call in. As people are calling in, one of the questions in the chat room, hey, when is the CCNA session going to be? Wouldn't that be fun? I would love to do a CCNA course. I think that would be great. Right now, we're busy shooting Network Plus, because Network Plus is going to be refreshed by the end of the year. But after Network Plus is done, what I'm finding is a lot of my Network Plus content is coming from a CCNA course that I already made. Already wrote a CCNA course and never shot it. You believe that? I made labs. I made a course. It's just a timing thing. It's not because I didn't want to, just didn't have time. But my plan is in the future, if it works out, and I think it might, I'd love to do a Cisco course. We'll see if the Cisco piece works. I don't want to do it now because I think it probably will be refreshed at some point. But one of the questions that comes up whenever you talk about CCNA is, should I get a CCNA certification or should I work on Network Plus certification? And it's a bad question because they are in no way comparable to each other. They are completely different certifications for all intents and purposes. They have a different set of requirements. They are used by different employers for different reasons. They are not something you would exchange one for the other. If you are trying to get into help desk, you're trying to learn the fundamentals of networking, you're not necessarily looking to be a network administrator, a switch administrator, a router administrator, at least not yet. You're really just trying to get your foot in the door. The Network Plus is an entry-level cert that is specifically designed for that. That is a very specific niche for Network Plus, and it is a good precursor to the content of things that you will need to know for a CCNA if that's what you would like to do later on. Some people will tell you, why are you stopping there? You should just skip Network Plus, go straight to the CCNA. Well, why are you doing that? Why don't you skip the CCNA and go right to CCIE? Well, the reason you don't do that is because there's a fundamental set of knowledge you need before trying to jump into that. Why aren't you in charge of some nuclear power plant somewhere? Just jump into that. Don't start at the very bottom of the nuclear power plant. You need to start with someone who understands the nuances of nuclear fission. Well, that's not exactly the issue either. You have to start somewhere and then ease up to that. You have to get the fundamentals and then build on those fundamentals. Now, there's a lot of people that do start with CCNA. They're looking to be a switch administrator. They're trying to become a router administrator. But what they have to effectively do is learn all of the Network Plus content while they're also trying to learn all the CCNA content. So it's not that one or the other is being swapped out. You're actually doing twice as much work if you jump to the CCNA without doing the Network Plus first. There's a very good fundamentals in the Network Plus. You learn a lot of good command line parameters. In the new Network Plus, they even extended out some of the command line things that you would need to be able to do. I like what they're doing with that, but they are not something you would swap one out for the other. They have very specific requirements to be able to do that and make that happen. So that's why I would focus on that too, is find the goal of what you're trying to do and fit it with the right cert. You would never just pick a cert because somebody else likes that cert, unless that somebody else who likes it is the employer. Maybe that's who we ask. is ask the employer what you would like to have. Oh, I'd like to get this job. Would you prefer that I had a Network Plus or prefer I had a CCNA? And they'll tell you. They'll either say, oh, you should have Network Plus. It's fine. Oh, no, we'd love for you to have a CCNA. Or they might say, we don't care if you have one or not. So you got some options to be able to do that. Hopefully that's one that you can work through too, and figuring out the details. And that's why I would like to do a CCNA course, so that you would have the option to be able to do that. Are there other networking certs? Not really. Not really. There are, but not really. Not any that employers really care about. Cisco's done a very good job at capturing the network certification market. They don't have a good entry level into it. I guess they've effectively decided CompTIA's got the entry level. We're not going to compete with that. So we're going to do the next level up, which is perfectly reasonable to me to be able to do that. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's talk to the 703 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, am I on?
You are on.
Awesome. Thank you for taking my call, Professor Messer.
Thank you for calling.
Of course, I have to butter you up first. Just say that I'm so grateful for all the information and resources you are practically giving out to people.
I'll take it.
It's really great. And,
well, I like giving it out to people. I appreciate that you appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, my question should be fairly short and sweet. So I have a entry-level IT job. I do help desk for a school system. I'm pretty familiar with basic networking concepts and troubleshooting and all that stuff, but I'm kind of looking towards the future, starting to look at building certifications. And obviously, the first place you could potentially look is A+. But some people have told me that that might not be really worth my time, since I already have that foot in the door, and I already kind of have the knowledge I need. I could probably pass 1001 without any issue. So maybe going right to Network Plus. Maybe 3 to 5 years down the road, maybe working in VMware management. I have my own ESXi host at home, so I'm pretty familiar with all these things.
Great.
So that being said, I was just wondering if you had any sort of insight on that, given my current position.
I do, and this has actually come up in my house recently. My son just graduated with his cloud engineering degree, so he's got a 4-year degree. He is ready to jump in. He has been doing containers. He is familiar with Wireshark. He's been setting up network configurations. He is on it. And so I asked him, okay, are you going to go get your A+? And he's like, what? I've just spent all of this time and effort learning these high-level things about networking and the cloud, and why should I go get an A+? And I said, well, it's not what I want you to do, and it probably isn't what you want to be able to do. But one of the things that you will run into, especially with working through all of these, it's what the employer wants you to be able to do. So that is the thing that at least I feel is the more important part of this, which is it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about what people are willing to do to allow you to get a job with them, or want you to do to get a job with them. And if an employer says, we know you've already got the VM stuff down, you're really familiar on the networking side, you've been building your own computers, you're very familiar with Windows, whatever it happens to be, you do all of that, and then you find that the employer wants you to have an A+. Well, you go get your A+. To your point, at this point, you'd probably be able to study very easily and pass the exam to be able to earn that qualification. Then that would be a perfect reason why you would do that. On the flip side of that, it may be that no employers are asking that of you. They already recognize you've been in the industry. They already know you have this knowledge. There's no reason they would want you to be able to do that. So that is a case where maybe an A+ doesn't make any sense. But again, it's not up to me and it's not up to you. It's whatever the employer or the hiring manager would like. That's where I would recommend you focus your efforts, because that's where you're going to want to be able to really learn what's going on.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense too. I think my job title alone kind of gives off A+ vibes, for lack of a better phrase.
Sure.
So it might not be the best thing to try to pursue in the short term. It's just more so of like, if I wanted to apply for a system admin role, maybe like, 2 to 5 years or something like that. What certs can we start building now? So especially if that's the case, maybe not A+.
When I was
that definitely gives me some well-needed insight.
When I was working at Network Associates, I got my Security Plus because I was doing tons with security technologies and IPS and firewalls and antivirus, and I wanted to have that security certification just so I could show people, no, security is very important to me. I, of course, got a bunch of McAfee and Network Associate certifications to go along with that because those were the products that we had. But then I also went back. I got my Network Plus and my A+, primarily because I was doing these types of training courses and I wanted to have those certifications in my pocket. But I moved throughout my career. I kept working for third-party companies. I kept working for other employers. And my last job, I got as a systems engineer for a next-generation firewall company. I didn't bring up that I had an A+. They didn't want me or even care that I had an A+, because looking at my experience, I had already been working as a systems engineer, already had experience with these security systems, kind of fit the goal of what they were trying to do with the particular hiring that they were doing. They weren't asking for an A+. I didn't tell them that I had an A+ because it really didn't matter. So that's a situation where even though I had it, they weren't asking for it. So why would I bother going through the process of telling them that anyway? So it really depends on what you're trying to do, where you're trying to focus, and what the employer wants you to be able to do.
That makes perfect sense to me. I really appreciate your time, Professor Messer. Thank you so much for taking my call. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate the call. Thanks so much. Best of luck. That's one of those where you have to think through what you're going to do with your career, because people send me questions all the time that say, all right, I finished my A+, what do I do next? I don't know. What do you want to do? What do employers in your area want you to have? What job are you working on next? And of course, sometimes it's not about getting a job. It's about just improving what you know as a technologist. But I would say the vast majority of people coming to my site, the vast majority of people watching these videos are people that are trying to get certified so that they could do something with it. So my question is always to turn it around and say, what do you want to do with this? You're taking the certification for a reason. There has to be a reason behind it. You just don't blindly go get a cert. So figure out what that reason is, see what employers are looking for, and then pick the one that's right for you. Back to the phone calls. Let's go to the 248 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is David. I'm calling from Michigan.
Hey, David. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Hi. So I have a question, actually. I have over 3 years of help desk experience.
Okay.
And I do have desktop support experience over like 3 to 4 months. And I've recently passed my Security Plus certification.
Nice.
Big thanks to you, by the way, because your videos have really helped me to pass my certification.
Congratulations.
And I also have, thank you. I do have an associate degree of the network security. However, in the meantime, I'm looking for advance my my career. So I'm trying to get any advanced position higher than the help desk, like system admin, network admin, or anything higher than the help desk. But I'm seeing most of the offered jobs online. They're requiring like a lot of years of experience, like 10 years of networking, like bunch of certifications beside that. So yeah. I feel like I'm stuck at this point and trying to, move forward out of the help desk.
There's nothing more irritating than to see those job postings. And you also see this all the time where people will ask you to have 10 years of experience in a technology that actually hasn't been out in the industry for only 3 or 5 years. So it's weird that you go through that process to be able to see that. They often will ask for very almost ridiculous sometimes amounts of knowledge to be able to move into a role that really doesn't require 10 years of experience to be a system administrator, to be a network administrator. In fact, the experience you already have, 3 years in the help desk, the professional experience that you have, the formal education that you have, really fits a lot of these things. But it's not about what we think, it's about what the employer thinks. And what I often find, though, is that, and this is an unfortunate sort of byproduct of the hiring process that people have within their companies, is sometimes what the hiring manager would accept is very different than what the job description says. And I understand that companies would like to make sure they get qualified applicants, that they don't get anybody that's just sending in a resume because the job is there. They want people to really be qualified for the job that they're advertising for. So I think sometimes they might overreact or over-qualify on the page to what they would really accept in the job role. The one thing I can tell you, and it's sort of a mantra that I have, is look at the job description. And if you really objectively feel that this is a job you can do, that your particular set of skills, your knowledge, your experience fits with the job that they are putting on that page, you should apply. It doesn't matter if they're asking for 10 years of experience or 5 years of experience or 15 years of experience or whatever it is. Don't worry about those things, those barriers they put up. You should not be the one to decide you're not qualified for this job. They should be the one to decide they're not qualified for the job, because we all know that if you're asking for 10 years of experience for a job that really only requires 3, that you're not going to get very good resumes, or they're going to have to collect the resumes they've got and sort of pick between what they've gotten so far. So I would tell you, submit your resume. Do you have 10 years of experience? You do not. Did they ask for 10 years of experience? They did. But wait, that seems like you would be an automatic reject. Well, as it turns out, it's not. It's not an automatic reject, especially if they start looking through your resume and they see that you have some practical experience for years, and they see that you have formal education that fits into this particular area. And that all of these things, when you start weighing them back and forth, the HR person who looks over the resume says, not 10 years, but that's pretty good. Let's pass that resume on to the hiring manager. So let them be the one to decide whether you go or whether you don't go. Are you setting yourself up for some type of rejection? Oh, sure. But that's the job process. If you're not ready to be rejected, you should not be looking for a job, and you should not have a YouTube channel. That's sort of the two things I think create a thick skin. If you've ever had to date, then you know what rejection is like. So just be ready to embrace it. Will you be able to get every job you apply for? Of course not. So just keep applying. Keep updating your resume. Keep customizing your resume for the job you're submitting. Make sure you have a customized cover letter for the job you're sending in, which, by the way, can be a good tool to overcome some of those 10-year requirements, is having a very, very good cover letter. In my video, how 5 more reasons your resume keeps getting rejected, I give a very good example of a customized cover letter that will show somebody how their job description fits your job experience perfectly. And you should be doing that so that someone can read through that and see very quickly you're qualified for this job. That's a great way to kind of skip over or not ignore that they're looking for 10 years, but perhaps make it so that it's not as big of a deal that they said 10 years is there. And certainly don't make yourself not send a resume in because it doesn't match 1-for-1 with what they're looking for. Send the resume. They throw it in the trash, they throw it in the trash, but you gave it a shot, and sometimes they don't throw it in the trash, and that's the more important part.
Oh, yeah, it's really makes sense. Thank you so much. And also, I have another question. So after passing the CompTIA Security Plus certification, do you think I can move on with a specific other kind of certification like the CCNA or Network Plus to advance my networking skills?
I think that's a very good place to start adding on additional credentials to a Security Plus. We've talked in other study groups, especially our Security Plus study group. I think a lot of people will make they'll try to take the Security Plus exam and then immediately say, okay, I need a security job now. But what they find is that you usually don't have a lot of entry-level security jobs. There's very few entry-level security jobs in IT security. Most often, you are at a different part of the IT level or phases of your career. You've been through networking, you've been through desktop support, and then at that point, finally, you are at a point where you could be moved into security. It takes a lot more to sort of get into the security role because you need a good foundation of these technologies to be able to apply the security on top of. Now, because of that, I tell people all the time, yes, you're going to need Security Plus. And in fact, if you're planning to do any work associated with the federal government, Security Plus is practically a prerequisite. However, if someday you really want to get into security, Security Plus on its own probably is not going to give you what you need to really complete that particular part of your puzzle. I highly recommend that you get networking knowledge because everything in IT security touches the network. Everything in IT security integrates with the network. You have to be an expert in protocols, in routing, in switching, in operating systems. You have to know a lot about a lot. And to be able to do that, you have to make sure that you have security knowledge, yes, but also operating system and networking knowledge as well. I think that's a great idea.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, that really makes a lot of sense and answer all my questions. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the call. Best of luck. When I was working as a systems engineer for a network monitoring and performance company, worked for Network General, the company that made the sniffer product. So I worked many, many years there as a systems engineer. I got to talk with a lot of network professionals, people who were experts in doing networking on probably hundreds and hundreds of companies around the world. And then I moved into a company where I did security, next generation firewalls, high level security. And what I found is when I went back into these companies, a lot of the people in the room who were part of the security team were people that I used to work with that were on the networking team. It's a very common path to be in networking, become an expert in the networking side of things, and then use that expertise to leverage yourself into security. It's remarkable how many security people in an organization were also part of the networking team. If you find or you work with people in IT that are in security, ask them if they used to do networking. And I bet you get a very strong, a very big percentage of those folks who have done networking in the past because it's almost required to be able to do that. In the chat room, Star Walker asks, when can I expect to receive a voucher if I purchased it today around noon? Well, on my site, you'll see that the SLA, the service level agreement for getting a voucher to you is next business day. However, I tend to get them out very quickly. I try to get them out within an hour if I'm here in the office at the time. But overnight's kind of the only, when I'm sleeping, I don't send them out. But right after we're done today, I can easily do that. And if it's something where you need it very, very quickly, just send me an email because I'll see your emails come in as well. I'll see your order for the voucher. And then if you need it like, I need it very, very quickly, I will send it out to you very, very quickly if that's at all possible. So I can make that happen. I got ways. I know who's running the business here. I'll find out. And that would be my wife who's running the business. So she knows to make sure that I get some of those things out. So you can always ask me to expedite it, and I'll make sure I get that expedited out to you. Not a problem. I don't sleep a lot, but I do sleep. Absolutely. Back to the phone calls to 773. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Professor. This is Joe calling from Chicago area.
This is Joe from Chicago. How are you, sir?
Fine, thank you, sir. It's always nice to watch your show. It's really wonderful. Thank you very much for all your help.
It's good to talk to you again. Thanks for calling.
Professor, I'm sure you heard of this new news about Windows 11. Have you had a chance to kind of look at it and see, is it really, is going to happen soon or later?
This is one of the big stories of the last week was the Windows 11 announcement. Microsoft has said Windows 10 is the last Windows. We will never do a Windows after Windows 10. We will simply update Windows 10 through the years, and Windows 10 will be the only thing actually, we're going to do Windows 11. We're totally doing Windows 11. That stuff we said about Windows 10, never mind. What were we thinking? That was crazy. we need more revenue. So Windows 11 is more revenue for us. We're going to have a new version, and it's going to be better than 10. It's going to be 11. How can we prove to people it's better if it doesn't have a bigger number? I don't know why they decided to change gears, but they did. They thought, well, we know that Apple came out with OS 10 in 2001, and they've simply improved on and created new versions of OS 10. And here today, over 20 years later, we still have Mac OS 10. But we just can't seem to do that with Windows. Windows, we expect the numbers to increase. Increasing numbers means there must be something new and better. So therefore, we've changed our mind, and now we're going to do Windows 11. Now, by the looks of Windows 11, it's an incremental update to Windows 10. They updated some of the UI. They updated where the menus was. They made a big deal about how they did not take away the start menu. So they've learned their lessons, if nothing else. And it does look very good. I have not loaded Windows 11 on my machine. I have way too much going on to be able to deal with that. And it didn't look like it was something I really, really, really needed to do at the moment. Obviously, they're shooting for the end of the year to be able to have Windows 11 out in production and be able to do that. But I think that they wanted to make some dramatic changes to the operating system. They wanted to change the way it looks, the way it feels. And it was dramatic enough that they really felt that they really couldn't call it Windows 10 any longer. So that's one of those situations, is that Mac OS stays at Mac OS 10, but Windows goes to Windows 11. Maybe they think that makes Windows better too. So that there could be a whole marketing thing behind this. And there is some nice things. The menu is nice. And as people in the chat room mentioned, it has an integration with Android. I think that's a very broad and not necessarily descriptive term to describe what they're doing with Android. But certainly there is a hook in Windows 11 that might allow you access to do things that are Androidish in Windows 11. Pretty nice. What's really going to happen with that? We will see. We will see what happens with Windows 11. It's obviously not out yet. They've made a number of statements regarding the hardware that you would need to run Windows 11, and it's a pretty significant set of requirements that not everybody running Windows 10 can do. So what we will find, I think, is that a lot of people will still continue to run Windows 10, and then as people purchase new computers, we'll start to see more Windows 11 adoption. Windows 10 is working great. There's nothing wrong with Windows 10. And so a lot of people are going to find that Windows 10 works great. They're not going to need to move to Windows 11. But Windows 11 is for the rest of us that want the newest, greatest. There's a new thing and I must have it. Then yeah, we'll run Windows 11 and figure out how that works. In the meantime, the rest of us will keep running Mac OS 10, I guess, and feel that we don't have a bigger number than Windows. Windows is the bigger number now, so it obviously must be so much better. But we won't know until it's out. I like what they're doing with it. I like the way it looks. I like what their approach is to security. I like that they're starting to make some moves into a better working operating system from an end user's perspective, which Windows has never quite been able to do with the elegance of Mac OS. I think if you had to make a comparison, that's an obvious objective comparison. So maybe finally they're at the point where Windows will become more elegant in how it works and that it becomes more of a user's operating system rather than something that was running in DOS that we stuck a graphical interface on. We'll find out. And I'm looking forward to loading it on my machine as soon as I have something viable enough to load into a VM and make it something that I have time to work through. I think it's going to be fun.
And Professor, what do you think that would be putting some strain on manufacturers, which they are, coming preloaded Windows 10? Because as you mentioned, there will be more. There's need for more resources. So for example, the motherboard can support whatever, they need new things. So for manufacturers, how are they going to deal with it, do you think?
The hardware requirements of Windows 10 and Windows 11 are not that different. And a lot of people kind of forget that the 64-bit version of Windows 10 only requires 2 gig of memory to install. And the people will look at the requirements for Windows 11. I think it was 4 gig in Windows 11 for that 64-bit version. So it doubled to 4, but We pretty much all have 4. Did they say 2? I saw one that went back and forth. I think a lot of people on the net were trying to get information out quickly, and I don't think it all hit. The part where people really got caught, though, with the hardware requirements was that Windows 11 requires a Trusted Platform Module version 2 on a motherboard. So this TPM is either a chip that's integrated into the motherboard that you're using, or it is a separate module that can be swapped out on your motherboard. That's actually not very common, quite honestly, but there are some motherboards that support that, where you can remove an old TPM and put a new one in. That TPM requirement of 2.0, relatively new in the scope of all of the machines that are currently running in the world. So an older machine would really not be able to support TPM 2.0 unless it had some way to upgrade the TPM, and most don't. So you'd have to have a new machine with a new motherboard that supports this newer TPM standard of 2.0 to be able to run Windows 11. And the other hardware requirements in memory and CPU. And people in the chat room are like, what? 4 gig? You can't run Windows with 4 gig? Microsoft is not saying run Windows with 4 gig. Just as they're not saying you should run Windows 10 with 2 gig. That is the minimum hardware requirement to install the operating system. That is not the recommended amount of memory to use the operating system. And as a technologist, those are 2 very important statistics. Those are 2 very important things to keep in mind. But minimum requirements are where we start to be able to just install the operating system. So we can all fight about what you would ultimately need to run the operating system. The answer is we don't know yet. But to install the operating system, you need 4 gig of memory. I think I got that one right. Somebody can double check me on the Windows 11. It's 4 gig, 2 gig on Windows 10. But it's the TPM piece. You don't often find a replaceable TPM. They're not as modular as you might think. And in fact, Microsoft recognized this because if you go to the page that says, will my machine run Windows 11? It tells you, oh no, you're not going to run Windows 11 because you don't have a TPM that's 2.0. But here are manufacturers that have computers now that you can buy that will work with Windows 11 when it comes out. So I think they already recognized that the requirements were so restrictive that people are going to have to upgrade their computers, and they realized it so badly that on the page that you check to see if your system will run Windows, it's already set up to tell you, here's some new machines you can purchase. So they already knew this. This wasn't a surprise. So I don't think, a lot of people have speculated maybe they'll make the requirements less. Maybe they'll allow the older TPMs to work properly in Windows 11. I don't know that's really going to be the case. I think they're going to stick with that unless they get just enormous pushback. But anything can happen. I thought they were going to stick with Windows 10 and never call it Windows 11 ever. So things can change. We'll just have to keep track and see what's going to happen by the end of the year.
Thank you, Professor. One last question. You think if you could run Windows 11 on a what's called a virtual desktop, if you could create one with those capabilities, or you still have to rely on your own hardware support, power, whatever,
Well, I'm certainly going to run Windows 11 in a VM. I'm not going to run Windows 11 on a standard desktop. Although my machine, my Mac OS, my Mac computer is not the newer M1 chip, so I could reboot this system into Windows 10 right now and run natively as Windows 10 on this computer if I wanted to, because it has a separate partition that's just Windows 10. I don't know if Apple's going to support that in Windows 11 or not, but certainly I can run it as a VM right now using Parallels on my Mac OS desktop if I wanted to. It runs just fine. It's very early on, though. Windows 11's kind of in alpha. It's not really even in beta. So it's not something you would run as a production system, but certainly I think people will be running it as a VM on a lot of different operating systems. And I certainly will, because at some point I'm going to have it as part of the A Plus someday. And that's certainly going to require I run some Windows 11.
Thank you very kindly, Professor. I really appreciate your help. Thank you very much. You have a great day and be safe.
Thanks, Joe. Same to you. Appreciate the call. That's one of the things I think Microsoft needs to And I think they did have it together. People said maybe they'll change the requirements. I don't know. If you've got a relatively new computer, then it probably has Windows, or probably already has TPM 2.0 or something upgradable to a TPM 2.0. If you don't, you're going to need new hardware. I think that's just how it's going to be. You just don't have the choice. So that's it. Will it run without the TPM? I don't think it will. Even virtually, I don't think so. Maybe they will have a way that you could run it without that. But I suspect because they made it such a requirement that there must be something about the boot process. Usually during the boot process, we don't often see it. There's a whole set of checks that takes place to check the kernel of the operating system and the core system files. Then it checks the drivers that are running to make sure that nobody's modified the drivers so that nobody can take advantage of your computer. And then they check all the applications that are loading to make sure those applications are working properly. There is attestation processes that occur where the system will attest that the operating system that you're running has not been modified, and the cryptography around that attestation process requires a particular TPM. And I think that there's probably something, I don't know this, but there's probably something they're putting into the code of the operating system that requires that updated version of TPM because there are advanced capabilities that only that version is going to be able to provide during that startup process or during the ongoing cryptography required for disk encryption and other types of cryptography. We will see. The TPM is going to be kind of a stumbling block for a lot of people. We'll have to see where that goes from there. Back to the phone lines. Go to 447. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Hi. My name is Greg. I'm calling from London.
Hi, Greg.
And I've got a few things I'd like to mention. First of all, thank you very much for your work. I mean, you really helped me out passing my A+ Core 1 exam on Tuesday.
Oh, great.
So, that helped me a lot.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So now I'm preparing myself for Core 2, hence I'm on this live stream.
Yep.
There was one thing I'd like to mention. I'd like to add some value as well. There's a little trick I figured how to memorize stuff from a list, so that might actually help some users. So I thought I will mention that on the phone call.
Fire
basically,
away.
I'm going to give you an example of port numbers, right? So just take a sheet of paper and just write down all of the acronyms. And then you assign port numbers to them. It's like a little exercise, right? So, for example, HTTP is port 80, right? And just write down, all of the acronyms from the list, and then try to use your memory and write down the numbers, right? And, okay, once you write this down, and once you're sure that these are the numbers, then you take a second sheet of paper and, again, write this everything and just try to, you write down the port numbers, not port numbers, the acronyms. Now, you don't know port numbers, for example, FTP, right? And, okay, so I don't know FTP, I don't know what SMTP, and et cetera. And then you just focus on these. So, because you already memorized HTTP, HTTPS, and et cetera, so you don't have to focus on these. So you can use that sheet of paper or even like a little card, sticky note, just put it on your work area, and just memorize those. So that will help you with studying on A+. So it's a little trick I figured.
I think that's a great way to do it.
So
I think that repetition, we don't often think about it this way, but I think repetition is a great way to have to learn some of these rote memorization issues. And on the A+, things like dealing with port numbers is one of those that is rote memorization to the most part. And then we have to take it the next level. Once we already know the protocol and the port number, we really do have to know what it does. FTP, we have to finally memorize 20 and 21, but then you have to know, well, what does that do? When would I use that? So we have to add on top of that piece. But if you do it over and over, it's surprising how few times you have to do it to finally have the things start locking in. I think it's a great way to do it.
Yeah, that's literally, and even like a flashcards on your mirror in the bathroom, or maybe like next to your closet or wherever. It's just like put stuff that you kind of struggle with, the things that you just can't put it in your head, and then they just kind of happens, So that helps you a lot.
Most people are going to be studying for more than 20 or 25 days. What if you just put one flashcard or one sticky note on your mirror every day with one port number and with one protocol? That's it. Just do one a day. Even that would be useful. And everywhere you go that day, I see FTP everywhere I go today. FTP 20 and 21, FTP 20 and 21. Finally, at the end of the day, you've seen it enough that now tomorrow we can do a different one. So that I think would be a great way to go about doing it too.
And yes, I thank you for that, Professor. And also, I've got a second question,
Sure.
and it's going to be a short one.
Okay.
So, I did start applying for jobs already. So I'm thinking that I'm going to do things at the same time. So I'm studying for my Core 2, and also I'm going to apply for 2 jobs as well.
Great.
And my question is, what would be your suggestions / recommendations / tips on how to behave, what to do, or maybe what not to do in like first 90 days of the first role in IT? So it's kind of do and don't.
There's no way if you your first times when you first get into IT, you're sort of almost overwhelmed at the amount of things you have to learn. When you first get your very first job, really anywhere, there's a whole onboarding process. You have to go through kind of the HR paperwork side of things. You have to give them all your tax information to get the insurance pieces going, get where is your paycheck going to be direct deposited, all of those things that every job has. But I think the part that helps the most when you get into a job in IT from the very beginning is just become a sponge and ask as many questions as possible. It's your one opportunity for you to not look like an idiot because you've never worked here before. You don't know any of these things. It is the perfect chance that when somebody is doing something in front of you, you can ask them, what is that? What am I looking at? I know I haven't done this yet, but tell me a little more about what you're doing so I can keep track of what's going on in front of me. And maybe some of it will soak into my brain so that I'll know next time what these things are that we're doing. Although I will tell you throughout my career, that's been my philosophy constantly, is to tell people, hold on, I'm not done what you're doing right there. Go slow for me so that I can get as much as I can about what you're doing and kind of capture that into my brain. One of the things I think we're very bad at doing in technology is asking questions when we don't know. I think it's probably human nature in general, not really just about technology. But if you can start getting into the mode of telling people, can you show me that? I've never done that before. I'd love to learn what you're doing right there. People in IT are so good at wanting to share these things. They really are. Most of the people I've ever worked with in my career have been open and honest and helpful and call me anytime, and I'll be glad to do a screen share with you and go through this. There's so many people willing to do this. You should be willing to ask when you start to see things you don't know. So when you first get into an IT job, you're going to be learning and going at full steam. They're going to be hitting you with a fire hose of things. You're not going to be able to drink all of it, but make as many notes as you can, make as many tips as you can, make sure you meet as many people as possible. Probably the most important thing in your career is not necessarily knowing what you need to know, but knowing who you should call when you don't. If you can figure out, okay, when this goes wrong, who should I be talking to? That's actually more important, because then you can pull in those people that have the knowledge and help you out with those. So as you are creating your technical database of things in your brain, you should also be creating your LinkedIn list of names of all of the people that can help you out with these problems when you run into them, because that's also going to be important for you, not just in the first 3 months, but ongoing.
All right, that's actually a really good advice. So basically, just I should become this sponge that soaks all of the knowledge, if possible.
Absolutely, no question. It's going to be a huge part of what you do. And people expect you to be that way in the first 3 to 6 months anyway. You're not going to feel comfortable walking in the door of the office until about 6 months have gone by. And then finally, at that point, you're only a little bit scared to touch anything, but you're at least in the mode of what you can do and what you can't do.
Yeah, this is something I was thinking about. Just kind of, be a student again, be a humble student, and just showing ability and showing willingness to learn new things.
It's one of the best ways to work throughout your career.
Yeah, it's any career actually. Actually, I've got one more question that actually popped in my mind, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So you mentioned that in some previous study group, I can't remember which one was that, but basically you mentioned that you just started working in IT, and then you kind of figured what you want to do. Like you said that you focused on things you enjoy doing that, and you just wanted to learn as much as possible on that subject. So I'm kind of like that in this moment where I'm trying to figure out what I want to do in my career. I know it's going to be IT because, I always been surrounded by computers, if you will.
Yep.
But I just really don't know where should I proceed with my career. So it's kind of maybe a little insight from you.
For me, these things sort of popped up as my career went on. I think it was a combination of what I was interested in, what employers were willing to pay someone to do, and then a natural interest. I have a problem with shiny things. If something's shiny, it catches my attention, and that's the thing I want to do. So I've sort of followed the shiny thing throughout my career. I started off as a field technician. I'd hop in the car in the morning. I'd have my list of people I had to visit that day. I would go drive to their facility to plug in a printer, to upgrade the memory, to install a hard drive, to fix a video issue, whatever it happens to be. I would do that, and then at the end of the day, get back to the home base and check in and get my list for the next day ready, or things that I need to do for the next day. And then I figured out from there, it'd be great if I didn't have to drive everywhere. I think the shiny part there was if I had a desk in a building, that would be great. So I started looking for jobs that needed the same type of skills, but there was a desk and I could be in one building. So I started working in an insurance company, did that for 5 years. While I was there, I was doing mostly the field technician type work, fixing a printer, installing memory, doing this. And then I realized, wow, these network operating systems they're using are really interesting. A lot of people are accessing these network services. Let me learn more about the servers. So I became kind of a server administrator, became an expert in Windows, and then realized this is all interesting, but it's all connected with the network. So years later, the shiny thing sort of moved down to the network. And I thought, I'd really like to know more about these protocols. I'd like to know about how the network operates. And I started getting as much knowledge as I could on the network. Well, from there, that network knowledge, along with the operating system knowledge, along with the server knowledge, took me into network management and network troubleshooting. And that took me to a company that made network troubleshooting tools. And I became a systems engineer for those companies. So it never was one technology. Through the years, it's been hardware, servers, workstations, network, security. And I just kept sort of adding on and moving around and finding the thing that was exciting at the time and moving into that area. And I think that's pretty much how most IT people operate. I think that's how most people go through their IT career, is they start with one set of technologies. But I can tell you right now, if you're starting right now in IT, when you're done with this career, many, many moons from now, you will have gone through many different iterations of jobs. You will not be doing the same thing with the same technology. And in 10 years from now, there's going to be a whole different set of technologies anyway that we haven't even created yet that they're going to need smart people to be able to operate with. So that's why I always tell people, don't worry what you're doing now. You're going to do something else in 5 years. So you should already be thinking about what interests you so that you could start moving the boat in that direction, looking for opportunities in that area, and then you'll be able to jump on those opportunities when they occur.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking as well. Just kind of pinpoint any particular areas where I'm interested at. And actually, I've got one more question. I promise this is the final one. You said that I'm going to be doing a different job within 5 years. So really, when I think about it, if a recruiter asks me, what kind of job? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Which is one of the tricky questions I get. Thank you. So my question is, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like, this is because I don't know. Honestly, I literally don't know where I go with that.
The answer when somebody ever brings up those absolutely horrible interview questions like that to me is, who knows? Think back of what you did 5 years ago, and the world is a completely different place than it was 5 years ago. Technology is completely different than it was 5 years ago. No one could have ever predicted 15 years ago or 20 years ago that the cloud would be the thing that we're working with now to the degree that it is. So how can anybody predict what things are going to be in 5 years? My goal is to continue learning, continue improving myself, and whatever happens 5 years from now, I'm going to be ready for it. I think that's the only answer you can ever give for the 5-year answer, because we don't know. And anything else seems to be disingenuous. I'm going to be CEO in 5 years. I'm going to have your job in 5. Those are stupid answers. The answer is we don't know. You don't know. I don't know. We don't know. All we can do is prepare ourselves the best we can and be ready 5 years from now.
Yeah, this is really true. The only thing you can think of, where would I be in 5 years? If you're applying to be a doctor, then probably going to be a doctor in 5 years. But other than that, yeah, technology and world changes rapidly from month to month. So we don't know. But again, thank you very much for your help, Professor. I really appreciate that.
And thanks for your call. Best of luck. Best of luck with that Core 2 exam as well. That's always good to keep in mind. I've never really liked that 5-year question. It just doesn't apply to IT. But telling people that that the process never ends. And I think people getting into IT need to understand you will never stop learning. I think that's one of the huge advantages of this job. You're never going to be bored. You're never going to do the same thing 2 days in a row. This is not assembly line work. This is something where your day could be very different every day. You're learning something different every day, or you should be. If you're not learning something different every day, then you're in the wrong job. You've now learned everything that you need to know for this job. You now need to move to the next job. So that should be your cue. If you're comfortable and you're very familiar with the technologies you're working with and you're an expert in everything you do, you're in the wrong room. You should be doing more. So go plan to do more of those. Back to the phone calls to the 201 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Professor. My name is John. I'm calling from New Jersey.
Hey, John. What can we do for you?
I just wanted to ask you a quick question. I'm an electrician. I'm trying to get out of the field. I'm studying for my Core 1. I just want to know how am I supposed to gain IT experience without ever being in the field?
This is sort of the problem that everybody has with the catch-22. Employers want some experience, but how are you going to get experience if they don't hire anybody who doesn't have experience? It's sort of the same problem everywhere. It's not just an IT thing, but I think it's a multifaceted answer. It's not just one thing. It's not just two things. And if I had to qualify, it's really four things. I have a video, and I think I have linked to the video in the video description here. If I haven't, I'll make sure I do, which is how to get a job in IT with no experience, because it's where most of us start out in this as we go maybe get a formal degree, maybe we get a certification, and we're trying to figure out now how do we get that job. And it's different depending on the situation you're in. But in that video, it's a 30-minute video. So and it's full of content. It's more than I could ever talk about here. But the video effectively says there's 4 elements. You need a formal education, if at all possible. You don't have to have all 4 of these, but it helps if you do. A formal education, a set of industry certifications, which we're all working on, some practical experience, which is difficult when you don't have any yet, but in that video, I give you some examples of how you can get some. And then the last one, and this one may actually apply better for you, is it helps if you know someone who works there already. And it doesn't even necessarily need to be somebody in IT, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be somebody you know very well, as long as there's a business relationship or a casual relationship with the person that's there. You don't have to go to their house for dinner. You just have to have known them at a professional level, so that when you go into a meeting or you go into an interview, and you could say, well, yeah, I learned about the job because I know this person who works in accounting, or this person who works in IT, or this person, yeah, I know them from the Cisco user group, or I know them from church, or I know them from a club that we go to together. Those types of connections seem like they're not very, like they're not much. Like it's just a very casual, almost non-existent connection. But in reality, especially when hiring, those are very valuable, very solid connections. Having someone who can vouch for you, that they know you, yes, you're a good person, he has a good work ethic, we trust that this person's not going to be here today and just not show up the next day. Those types of connections are very valuable. People like to hire people they know, or people that are familiar to them. And so you already have this job in as an electrician. You have met a number of people. They don't even have to necessarily be IT people. But if you were to reach out to them and say, I'm looking to move into IT, do you have any contacts in your company or another company with IT? Maybe they're married to somebody who's in an IT company. Maybe they have family members that are in IT with another company. Maybe they have a business relationship with another company, and they'd be glad to introduce you. Those are the things that are incredibly useful. And unless you start putting out the feelers and asking, you'll never know that they're there. I often tell people who are working a job now and they're trying to transition into IT that there's a great opportunity there. You know, maybe your knowledge of the electrical field is one that you could move into IT, working for an electrical manufacturer of some kind, maybe that does tons of logistics and is shipping out and has tons of IT operations to be able to make that happen. Same thing that if somebody's I've had plenty of nurses say, I want to move into IT. They say, what can I do? I say, go talk to the IT department in your hospital, because you have all this knowledge in nursing, all this knowledge in medicine. And the one thing IT doesn't have a lot of is knowledge of the business. We tend to hire a lot of technologists. Well, if you're working for a manufacturing company, it would be great if the IT people knew something about manufacturing. If you're working for a healthcare company, it would be great if IT knew something about healthcare. It helps to put together these technology solutions so much better if somebody's knowledgeable within the organization. So that's why I mention find the thing that is sort of a hook back to the thing you used to do. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to do that, but it may help you during the job hunt.
All right, thank you very much, Professor. We'll be sure to watch that video, and I'm definitely going to ask people if they have any connections from it.
That's perfect. Best of luck, John.
Thank you.
I think whenever I start seeing this, and it does happen quite a bit, especially over the last year and a half, people have said, I can't do this anymore. Now what do I do? And it depends. So here's somebody who says, what about a baker? Well, I know one of the biggest bread companies in the Southeast United States is 30 minutes from my house. Enormous company. They have tons of IT, logistics, transportation, manufacturing. Be perfect for somebody who knew something about the business. Hospitals are another good example. Law enforcement is another good. Almost everything has an example of this. If you were in transportation, if you worked for an airline, trust me, I've been with the airline IT departments. They are enormous. They have tons of things that have to get done. Practically everything we do has a foundation of technology to it. So take advantage of that. And you've already got some practical knowledge in that area. They look for people like that. They'd love to hire you. Let's go to the 651 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from? Caller. Am I mute?
Hello.
Hey, caller.
Hi, Professor. Thank you for your help and doing a lot of research for the community.
Thanks for your call.
My question is, I am currently IT service desk technician for which I got from school, and what are those certification I will start getting off?
This is a sort of a common problem we all have, especially if you've just finished a cert or you're just getting into the planning of taking a certification. You have to wonder, where do I go with this? Which one do I choose? Because as we've seen, it can take you months to study and finally pass the exams that you need to earn these certifications. It's no small investment in your time and in your personal wallet to be able to take these certification exams. One thing that I recommend, and this is another one I'm going to pull directly from my video on how to get a job in IT with no experience, is that you have to look at what you want to do next. You don't have to know what you need to, where you want to be in 5 years. We just had that phone call. Nobody knows where they're going to be in 5 years, but you should have a very good idea what you want to do next. In the IT, we call it kind of the 3-year rule. Normally, we're in a job for 3 years, and then we move up to whatever the next tier is. Now, what that tier can be across the entire breadth of IT, but we need to, at least in our minds, have an idea that, I'd love to be in server administration. I'd love to be in workstation administration. I'd love to do networking. You should at least have some options of where you'd like to go next. But those options that you choose will help you understand where you can focus your efforts for certification. So let's say you're on the service desk now, you've got your formal education, someone has hired you, you're working on the help desk, and you've realized, wow, the people that I'd like to work with are the ones doing the Microsoft Server administration, and they're doing tons of cloud with that. So already you should start thinking, maybe I should look at getting one of these Microsoft certifications that focuses on services in the cloud or focuses on the Azure cloud specifically. That'd be a great place to move. Or maybe you're looking around and thinking, I would love to get into the networking team. That's a technology that really excites me. My next step up should be with the networking. Therefore, the certifications I'm going to choose will be very networking focused. Maybe it's Network Plus, maybe it's CCNA. So those should direct you. But you have to look at what jobs are in your area. You have to combine that with what interests you. And from there, you should be able to look through those job entries to see, what are employers asking for? Are they asking for Azure certs? Are they asking for Office 365 certs? Are they asking for CCNA? Are they asking for Network Plus? And then that's going to help you understand what you want to do next.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate your help.
I appreciate the call. Thank you for calling. It's one of those where you never know what that's going to be. And then sometimes you have a plan of what you're going to do next, and then something just falls down right in front of you. An opportunity suddenly breaks through the ceiling and says, here's what you should be doing. Maybe it's a new technology. Maybe it's somebody you used to work with who calls you out of the blue and says, dude, you got to get over here. This job is crazy. This would be perfect for you. It's an emerging technology. It's a startup company. It's a well-established, whatever it is, you need to be here. Sometimes those calls happen. The last call I got for the last job I worked for someone else was that call. Was somebody I worked with in the past who said, hey, we haven't talked for years, but I thought of you when this job came up, and they want to roll this thing out at the startup. We should go do this together. And I said, okay, let's try this. Let's see how this works out. And it was a fantastic decision that I had no idea was there. Had no idea was something I was going to do. Had no idea the opportunity was available. It was kind of outside my comfort level, I thought. But as it turns out, it was perfect. It was the perfect move. He was right. This was something that was a good fit for me. He saw it. I didn't. So sometimes that happens. You should be open for anything because, quite honestly, in this industry, anything can happen. It's crazy like that. Let's go back to the phones. I've got a lot of phone calls. I don't know if we'll be able to get through all of them today, but let's go to 419. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, how's it going? This is Joseph. I'm calling from Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington State.
Hi, Joseph. Thanks for calling.
Hi. So I just wanted to start off by saying I haven't started any of the certifications yet, but I'm looking into it as of right now. So a little bit of stuff right now I'm kind of naive on. I don't really speak the language quite yet, but I wanted to know what you thought like the biggest difference between maybe getting a job in a startup company compared to one of your big tech companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon might be. I like the idea of your big tech companies because being in the Army, we have a lot of benefits and pay here. So that's kind of like where I get drawn to when I see places like Amazon and Google. So what would you say are your biggest things? I know there's, your basic set of requirements. What would you say like the biggest difference between a big company and a small company is?
I have worked for different sizes of companies in my career. I worked for small businesses, for value-added resellers that was 15 to 20 people in the company. I've worked for multi-billion-dollar corporations that were large behemoths, specifically Network Associates, which was eventually was McAfee, turned into Network Associates, eventually turned back into McAfee again. That was an enormous organization with billions of dollars of revenue a year. And I worked with startups. My last job working with Palo Alto Networks, I started working at Palo Alto Networks as their 95th employee. And of course, now they've hired thousands and thousands and thousands of people. They're a public company and they're national, but I got in when they were a startup. And there are advantages and disadvantages to both of those situations. Larger companies are obviously well established. They usually have a revenue stream already, so they can afford to pay you a decent salary. They have very good benefits most often because they have the money coming in, so they can give you good health care and they can give you a good employee plan for savings for your 401k. They can give you sometimes options for stock options, employee stock options, and employee stock purchase, which if they are a public company can be very profitable. Those are fantastic. And plus you have the ability, they're a big company. And if everything is going well in the industry, you've got a job that's going to be around for a very long time. You don't have to worry about the company going under for the most part, and which is great. The challenge you have is that you're never going to be paid an enormous amount of money because there's a certain pay scale associated with your job at that company. You do have the benefit, though, of having a job every day that has a well-established set of job requirements, and that usually has a very good group of people to work with where you can learn something, which I think ultimately is what makes any job interesting. Those are the big companies. When I've worked for small companies, there's always the issue of resources. Everything costs money, and so you have to be very, very knowledgeable with the cost. You have to be very careful of cost. When I started with Palo Alto Networks, we were a startup. Next generation firewalls did not exist prior to us making the first one. So basically the first year of what I did was to go to customers, explain to them what a next generation firewall was, have them tell me that I was lying to them because nothing did that. There's no way this product does that. And then it was me plugging it in and showing them, no, this product really does do that. It's a new security technology. It's going to take over the world, and nobody sees us coming, and everybody should be on board with this. And it was one of those rare occasions in technology where nobody else had the technology. It was unique in the industry, and it actually did what we said it did. And obviously today we can look back and say, well, what an enormous success Palo Alto Networks was. But in the beginning, we didn't have money. We had investors. You had to be very careful about expenses. So travel, you were not traveling the fanciest travel in the world. You were challenged to still bring in a certain amount of revenue associated with that. You had to learn all these new technologies that nobody had seen before. It was a great learning experience to be able to have those things there. But even then, in the first 2 years of the company, we went through way too much growth too fast and ended up having to lay people off. There was a layoff. There was a riff that occurred where we had to fire people in the company just so we could stay alive and then sort of right-size ourselves so that we could properly roll out this on a larger scale over a longer period of time. It's exhilarating. It's sometimes frustrating. You'll learn a ton. You sort of have a lot of autonomy because there aren't a lot of people in the company and they're expecting you to be the one who's knowledgeable on how to do the things that you're doing for your job. So they're effectively hoping, as a startup, we're hiring you because you know what you're doing. You don't have time to learn the fundamentals. We're going to teach you this technology. Now go tell people about this stuff. That was great. But it's certainly a different environment where every day you're not sure, are we going to have enough money to pay payroll? In our particular case, we had very good investors, and that wasn't an enormous issue. But you're always concerned about growth. You're always concerned about the industry accepting the new technology. You're concerned about having a product that people will understand and recognize and want to invest in. Those are big challenges when you're with a small company. So both have advantages and disadvantages. Both have, there's a lot of risk in going to work for a startup. There's a lot of reward in going to risk for a startup because I got in before we went public. They handed out stock options to people and said, if this ever goes public, you can make some money from this. Through the years, I've worked for a lot of companies that have been private who have told me, here's a bunch of stock options. If we ever go public, this is going to be great for you. And it's never worked out. I never trust that as being something that could ever happen. If it does happen, I'll be glad. I'll be happy. It'd be a surprise, a happy surprise. And in the case of Palo Alto Networks, it was an ecstatic surprise. We did extremely well. We went public, and everybody who was there from the very beginning did just fine with their stock options. So we're actually able to use it. I have worked with companies where I had stock options, and the company sold, and the stock options were effectively useless. I had all of those, and they turned into nothing. So it can go either way. You kind of do have to watch out for that. Either way, it's fun. Right. If you have the ability to put the risk out there and do it, working for a startup can be exhilarating. It can be frustrating. It can be tiring, but there can be a good reward on the other side.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And like I was saying, that led me to my next question, which was like when you get into that lifestyle of IT and stuff, is that what you would describe as maybe a relaxed lifestyle, or is that something that's more of a attentive thing, like you're snapping your fingers and you're there for the problem, like then and there, or you have time in between things?
I think the thing we always hear about IT is that we always hear the bad stories. We always hear about the people that have a job where they're on the clock or on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They can't take any vacations. All the work they have to do is always during off hours. They're always in the office on Thanksgiving because they're in IT. But the reality is very few IT jobs are like that. In fact, you have the ability to choose an IT job that fits what you want to do for your career. I have had jobs that are all travel. I get on the plane on Monday. I travel. In some cases, I had a job, I traveled around the world. It was an international job. So I was getting on a plane on Monday, flying for 2 days, and landing in another country and missing a day somewhere. The weirdest time was when I left Taiwan and landed in Atlanta on a direct flight, landed in Atlanta an hour before I left. Those things happen. So I wanted that job. I wanted the ability to travel international. I wanted to tell the story to wherever it happened to be. I had the knowledge base and the skills to be able to make that happen. Other jobs I've had were jobs where I was on call, where I worked during the day 9 to 5, but if problems happened, they would call me at night and we'd have to connect and I'd have to fix whatever problem was there with the company's network. Those happen too. And I think when you get into those jobs, you start to realize there is a happy medium. There's different options. There's different jobs available. Ultimately, I worked myself into a job that was a lot of travel. In my case, domestic travel. It was in a region of the United States, but the entire job was effectively 9 to 5. that I didn't have weekends that I had to be on call. I wasn't called at night. Nighttime was my time. So there are jobs like that in IT. You just have to find those jobs and find the one that fits best what you want to do and how much money you want to make.
Of course. Gotcha. I have one last little small question, then I'll let you go.
Sure.
So I'm pursuing the A+, Net+, and Sec+ because I'm looking to switch jobs with where I'm at. We work a little bit with what are they called, virtual machines and stuff, and a little bit of IP addresses. And like I said, I still don't speak the language, but I do the job because I know what to do. So I just don't know like specific terms on stuff. So I'm switching jobs, and those would weight very well for my reclass packet. So that's why I want these certificates so I can get more into the realm. But I think once I get back into the civilian realm, what I would like to do is maybe try to do some of the cloud stuff with Microsoft and everything. And I wanted to know how well those certificates are weighted, like in pursuit of your new certificates that you need for that job, and what the new ones maybe might be.
Well, you're right on track. First, you've got tons of resources available where you are to get those certifications. Now, there's plenty of study materials available. You've got vouchers and low or no cost vouchers that you can use for these certifications. So there's a good foundation for studying and certification in the job you're using. And in a lot of jobs that are not military, you still also have situations like that. If you're in a job like that, you should absolutely take advantage of it. You're already thinking the right thoughts, though. And by the way, we're all in jobs in IT. You never know everything. You're never in a position where you are an expert in everything that you're working with and where it is, because you're constantly learning. The industry is moving way too fast to know everything there is to know. The best you can do is just keep studying, just keep reading, just keep watching videos, and just keep trying to keep track and up to date with what the latest technologies are. I love the idea of the cloud-based technologies that you're looking at. I mentioned earlier, my son just graduated with a cloud degree. So he's now got all of this knowledge in much more than I do on how to operate in the cloud, how to automate, how to orchestrate, how to build out the networks virtually, physically, and otherwise. He is taken off with that, and it's a hot part of the industry right now. So looking at Microsoft certifications, looking at cloud-based Azure certifications, AWS for the Amazon Web Service certifications, all of those are fantastic places to go. And the more you know about the cloud, the better your options will be, regardless of where you want to go.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I don't even know everything about it, but I think it's an amazing concept, and I think it'd be a really cool thing to be a part of. And I think if I did learn more about that, that'd be a better shot into bigger companies as well, which is where I kind of want to be at. But I'd like to thank you for your time today and speaking with me, and I hope you have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, Joseph. Thank you for your service as well.
For sure. Thank you.
The one thing that I think we should all be doing is thinking about where we want to go next and why we want to be there. And I think that the cloud side of things is so valuable, not just for the short term, not just what we want to do next, but these cloud technologies, they're here. They're not going anywhere. We're building onto them. We're making them more complex. We're adding more services to the cloud all the time. Anything you do now to learn or get into cloud technologies, you will use the rest of your career, at least to some degree. So learn what you can now. Go with it. It makes sense to me. Great White North, 437 area code. Hi, caller. Which name? Where are you calling from?
Hello.
Hi, caller.
Hi. Thank you first of all for having my call.
Thank you for calling. What's your question?
I'm totally beginning this field, and I'm planning to take my A+ exam by the end of this month, maybe by 30th.
Great.
Okay, so I just want to have a little bit more knowledge about how can I proceed from this way on, because I guess I have about 22 days left. I've done all the preparation, and now I will be starting with my revision and practice exams. And there are two basic questions from my side. Number one, how to go for, the practice exam in your opinion? And number two, what is this voucher and stuff all about? Because I'm totally new in this exam stuff, and I don't know about this how vouchers work and how these things go.
Well, you've got some advantages here, but one of the things you have a very aggressive schedule. If you're just starting some of your studies now and you're planning to take these certification exams by the end of the month, usually I would say the average is about 2 to 3 months to study for each exam. So that's a very aggressive schedule, but it's not impossible. And certainly if you have knowledge of other technologies in the industry, that time certainly becomes shorter to be able to get through one of these. You mentioned practice exams, and I'm a big proponent practice exams. Otherwise, I would not have written a book that has nothing but practice exam questions in it. But I think even without me doing that, there is still that need for somebody who's planning to take one of these exams to sit down and take some of these practice exams to see how well you do. Otherwise, how are you going to know if you're really ready to walk into the exam room? I really think you should have 4 things. You should have a good book. I think books teach you in a way that videos can't and hands-on can't. So books are incredibly valuable resources. A great video course. I know one, but there are others too. Get a good video course to go through. Get as much hands-on as possible. And this could be labs. It could be something that someone else provides. It could be something you do on your own with the existing operating systems and hardware you might have. And lastly, get plenty of Q&A. Go through those practice exams and make sure you correlate this back with the exam objectives. The exam objectives should be your master checklist. They will be the thing that has you really determining, have you learned that topic or not? So if you're really trying to put together a good strategy for passing these exams, those are the 4 things, really 5 things, which is the book, the videos, the labs, the practice exam questions, and then lastly, the objectives. Rolls all of that up under the objectives, and I think you'll be fine.
Sure. And one more thing about the labs. What about the labs? Do I need to use that virtual machines and do all the experiments on that? And what can I do with that? I don't get that one point.
Yeah, it's difficult when you haven't been working with the operating system and you're just sort of sitting there at a Windows desktop. What can you do with that? There are a number of books that have labs, or at least how-to sections inside of the books themselves. So you may want to look at some of the A+ books out there, because a number of them have some things that you can do with hands-on. In my videos, for example, I take you through some command lines where you can learn how to ping, how to trace route, how to use different commands to be able to view IP configurations and make modifications to the wireless side. Those are things you can follow along with my videos. Something as simple as that is a lab. You're getting some hands-on. You're running it yourself. You're running your own trace routes. You're looking at your own ping responses on your screen. Those are great ways to do it as well. So don't think that you need some type of formal, well-structured thing that's been put together. You may not. Those are available and out there, and you can purchase labs like that. But you may already have something in a book that you already have, and you may have things that you could pull from these existing videos I've created as well.
And the second one was about the vouchers. Actually, I am not new to this field, and I don't know how these stuff work. Can you tell me a bit about it? What is it, and how we can go with that?
You'd say that again. You asked specifically about which topic?
Vouchers. Like I have gone through the website of Pearson, and they are like that. Yes, you can buy some vouchers, and that can give you some kind of discounts on CompTIA A+ exam.
Yeah, the vouchers are here's the way they work as far as CompTIA is concerned. You can go to the CompTIA website and register for the exam. What that really does is take you over to the Pearson VUE website, because Pearson VUE is the company that makes the that provides the exams for CompTIA. CompTIA is contracted out with Pearson VUE to be able to do that. And you can go to the Pearson VUE website and you can pay for the exam on their website and take the exam. but you're paying full price when you do that. There are other ways to get discounts on these vouchers. You can effectively take the exam without paying full price. So on my site, for example, there's a 10% discount already built into the vouchers on my site. So you can buy a voucher from me, take that over to Pearson VUE and say, I would like to take my exam. And Pearson VUE will say, sure, here's your exam. And you just paid less to be able to take that. For those of you who are in college, who are in a university, and I think this is a North America thing, but you can check online, you want to go to the academic store, the CompTIA Academic Store. Those are the 3 words you should be putting into Google. CompTIA Academic Store. And if you are in college, you are a student, you are actively in college, taking college classes, there are discounted vouchers available on that store that have a discount of about 50% off, 50, half price for those vouchers, which is an enormous savings. So that's another place where having those vouchers can really discount the cost of the exam. And that might be something you might want to consider too. It's just a cheaper, less expensive way to take exactly the same exam.
Okay. So it is once again CompTIA Academic Store, right?
That's the place. If you're a student, that is the best place you can go. Best of luck.
Yes, thank you very much. One more thing, if I can add, I know that I can Google all of this stuff, but it is a great opportunity to talk to you, and I want the person whom I respect the most. I want his point of view, so I'm taking a little bit more time.
Sure.
So the thing is, I'm aiming for the security point of view. In 3 to 4 years, I'm aiming for my OSCP. Right now, I'm in my college. I'm on my drop, so I'm preparing for CompTIA A+ exam. And the next step, I'm thinking, not decided, but I'm thinking either go for Network Plus or CCNA.
I think
So
if you're...
Can you tell me the viewpoint? I mean, how can I go toward this so that by 3 to 4 years, I can go get my OSCP? And at the same time, as soon as I leave my college, that I guess it will be in coming March, I will be graduating from my college. And I also want to get some kind of job at the same time. Taking these 2-3 points in mind, can you give any suggestions if you have?
Absolutely. I think that's a good path you're setting too. I think getting the fundamentals in A+, getting a job, and then using that job to move into a higher level IT job is a perfect path. It's a common path, and it's the ones that most places will provide. You mentioned going into networking, understanding the CCNA, and that is a perfect next step, either after A+ or get A+, Network Plus, and then get the CCNA. I think all of those are perfectly valid. If you're planning to go into switching, routing, networking in general, the CCNA is sort of a requirement. That's a prerequisite for those jobs. So I think you're right to be thinking longer term, get the education, get the job, and then work with your CCNA towards the networking side of things if that's something that interests you, I think is a great place to go. The Security Plus, in some ways, could fit into that, but it may be more specific into what the employer is looking for. Here in the U.S., we have a lot of people working for the U.S. federal government where Security Plus is their starting point. But if you go to LA, you go to Texas, you go to Minnesota, Illinois, there are other places where the Security Plus may not be as something that's asked for as much as it is in different parts of the country. So make sure you check with employers to see what are they asking for. Is nobody asking for a Security Plus, or is everybody asking for a Security Plus? I think that would be a great way to try to figure out what the best direction would be to go with those things. Hopefully that can give you some perspective as well. I appreciate the call. This is one where, for those of you that were asking earlier about the academic store, to be able to qualify for the CompTIA Academic Store discount, you have to show that you are a student and that you are actively in classes. Someone in the chat room said, "Oh, you just have to have an email address at school." Nope, that's not it. They don't care if you have an email address at school or not. It helps, but they're going to be wanting evidence of you being in a class. And that's how they're checking this. There's a whole process they have and a whole set of things you can provide where they can even check that automatically. So it's more than just saying you have an email address. Doesn't work quite that way. Back to phone calls. Thanks for holding so long. The 757 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor. It's Will calling from the Newport News area, home of the greatest shipbuilders in the world.
It sure is. Hey, Will. Thanks for calling.
Hey, thanks for answering. How are you?
It is so good that you're calling. What could, is there you caught it right at the end too. So perfect timing. What can we do for you?
Two questions and two announcements. First of all, the first question is kind of a housekeeping kind of thing. Is YouTube responsible for managing the study group playlist?
YouTube is responsible for keeping the playlist, but you're looking at the person who is at sometimes good at managing the study group playlist and other times not so much. If you see something that needs to be corrected or added to that I missed, that's completely possible, and please let me know.
Well, it was more of a suggestion. I was wondering if perhaps the playlist could be reordered so that February 2019 is at the top and July 2021 is at the bottom.
Oh, I see. So have them in a different order than what they're there. Right now, I've ordered them as the latest study group is at the very top. It's the first thing on the list.
Yeah.
And when there is a newer study group, like after today, I'm going to stick this one at the top of the list. I'm open for suggestions. Is there a particular thought in your mind?
Well, I go back through the archive study groups, and I go back in through them and take notes while I'm listening and watching. And I just thought it would be a little bit nice if maybe they were in more of a chronological order rather than the most recent order.
I like the idea of you being able to see me get younger as we go through time instead of getting older as we go. Some of these study groups are years in the making because it's usually 3.5 years between exam releases or from the time an exam is released until the time the exam is retired. So my idea was to have the freshest stuff at the top, but I'm open. If other people have ideas, please leave comments on this video or send me a note. I'd love to get feedback and figure out where to go with it.
Yeah, it was just a suggestion. And the other thing is, it seems like I'm getting better with the practice exams, but I'm still missing as many as 30. And I'm thinking that maybe what I need to do is pull out the exam objectives and have them handy when I finish the practice exams so that, I can just have reinforced those things that I missed. What do you think?
Well, you'll notice on my practice exams at the bottom of each detailed answer, I tell you which section this particular topic came from. So although the questions themselves are randomized to really give you the same feel as an actual exam, you can still make a note. Well, I missed these particular questions, and here are the topic numbers associated with each one of those questions. So you should very easily be able to maybe compile them and at least do a quick cross-tabulation to see, is there a particular area where I'm missing more than another, or is it just across the board? And then you can make a determination from there on where you should study more.
Yeah, that sounds like a viable way to go about the idea. And the other thing I wanted to do a little bit of a PSA, among the recommended reading is Mike Myers. I found out quite by accident that there are some labs with the book, even if you buy it as a Kindle. There are labs. So
great.
Your watchers and listeners out there should be place themselves of it. And the other thing, one of the things that I'm thinking about doing is when I reconstruct my LinkedIn profile, maybe writing a white paper on a specific topic in A+. And, that way, I could get, I could raise my profile. So those are just two things I wanted to kick out there to the listeners slash watchers?
There was a great article, and I don't know if it was in the System Admin subreddit. I don't think it was the CompTIA subreddit. It might have been. But somebody had talked about they went through the process of getting their LinkedIn, making sure their LinkedIn page was up to date, and then they would constantly, every few days or every week, they would make a technical post to LinkedIn regarding a thing they did in their lab, building out a firewall, building out and troubleshooting a particular problem. And they documented what they did and gave very specific technical instructions on the things they were doing. And they ended up having recruiters see that and contact them directly with job offerings, to the point that they actually found a job that they moved to. They weren't even asking or wanting to find a new job, but these recruiters showed up with such great opportunities that they ended up using this knowledge they put onto LinkedIn to effectively get them a new job without even trying. I think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly the idea of a white paper, to put your subject matter expertise on display for the world to see.
It doesn't even have to be something huge. It could be a single article on how to use a particular Nmap scan. That's it. Nmap has like 25 different scans in it. Pick one of them, write up a document on using a service scan, using an operating system scan. What is it doing behind the scenes? How does it know what the service is? How does it determine what version number of the service it found without ever having to use that service or authenticate into that device? It's like magic, but is it really? Let's find out how Nmap does it. There you go. There's your first article.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got some ideas of my own.
Great.
I definitely have some ideas of my own. Yeah.
Definitely go with your ideas. This whole crazy, whatever this experiment is that has escaped the lab, that we now have live streams and books and video courses on, started with me writing an article on Nmap that ended up being 200 pages long and being a book on Nmap. And then things just sort of went from there. So you never know where this stuff is going to lead you. You just kind of have to go with it, go run really fast. Sometimes you're running really fast right into the brick wall. Just be ready for it. Learn from your mistakes, pick yourself up and keep going with it. You never know where it's going to go.
Right. Thank you for taking my call, Professor. Always great to talk to you.
Thanks, Will. I appreciate the call. Best of luck.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
One of the things that I really, really tell people is so important is always trying to learn more. But perhaps even more importantly is showing people that you know this content. LinkedIn tends to be a really good way to do this because you're able to post articles that other professionals are looking at, that your own group of people can see. They can share that to their group of people, professionals they're working with. You never know where these things are going to lead. And the fact that I was able to write a book, make the mistakes I made writing the book and publishing the book, finding out the things I did right about writing the book and publishing the book, led to more things. It led to more opportunities to make content. Suddenly we're able to make videos so much easier. Let's do some videos. Let's do a book to go along with the videos. Let's now do more courses. You just never know where these things are going to lead. So that's my recommendation, is to always keep pushing yourself, keep trying new things, keep creating more content. I think those things in itself are going to lead you down the road, and you'll be able to use those skills for your entire career. Communication skills in IT are sometimes difficult to find. And if you're somebody who communicates well, written, speaking, or both, you will find many more opportunities available for yourself within IT, regardless of where you go. Well, that brings us to the end of another couple of hours of an after show. We sort of went through the phone lines and just kept taking calls, but I love it. This is why we do these live streams and why we like it so much when you're here to join us. There are always some type of live stream coming up. Make sure you check the calendar. We've got a Network Plus live stream scheduled for Wednesday, of next week. I haven't even written the questions yet. I don't even know what it's going to be about and what we're going to talk about, but we'll have something. I'll write up some new things, and it'll be new for all of us. We'd love to have you come back then. Always keep checking into the calendar because schedules do tend to change. And next week for me, Ken, is a little chaotic right now, but I think it's going to be for Wednesday. But keep checking in, and we'll be able to keep you updated with exactly what's going on with my crazy schedule. And if it gets pushed, you'll be able to see it there at the calendar. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Thanks, everyone.